Yeah, where's the other one? Please.
Okay, Madam Mayor, it's 6:05 and we are live.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the March 21st, 2023 regular city commission meeting. Can I have the roll, please?
Yes, Mayor Betty Resch,
Here.
Vice Mayor Christopher McVoy.
Here.
Commissioner Sarah Maliga isn't feeling well, but was going to appear via Zoom. I'll let you know when she has arrived.
I think she's not going to. I just got a text from her.
Oh, okay.
Not going to be on the, and I feel horribly guilty because I'm the one that gave her what she's sick with.
Okay, Commissioner Kimberly Stokes.
Here.
Commissioner Reynaldo Diaz.
Here.
Okay, the Pledge of Allegiance will be led by, the infant moment of silence, by me. I just want to take this moment to recognize the hard work that our staff, our volunteers, the members of our community, the things that we all do to make the city a wonderful city. I have gratitude for all the hours and the efforts that get put in. It's hard work and very much appreciated. So with that, I will just say, let's start every day with gratitude in our heart and good feelings towards each other during the day. Amen. Mr. Diaz will lead the pledge.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Madam Clerk, are there any additions, deletions, or reordering?
Yes, I have one addition, new business I, resolution number 09-2023, opposing House Bill 1011, that only specified flags may be flown by local governments was added to the agenda.
Okay, thank you very much. Anything else? Anybody else? Okay, then do I have a motion to accept the agenda as amended?
Motion to approve.
Thank you very much. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, presentations today. Today, Mr. Pickett is here to give us, there you are, HRPB, Historic Preservation Board update by board member. No, Historic Preservation Board update by board chair, Stephen Pickett. I apologize, sir. You have the floor.
Yes, Pickett with the current chair for the HRPD.
I'm sorry, I don't think the mic is on, Mr. Pickett.
I think it might be on, but maybe not close. Well, it might not be on. A knob on the house.
Glenn is going to help out.
Aha. Sonny, let's give you all substitution church. There you go. That's a special all statement. Right. You're saying that Mike Kennedy will be against you.
Okay, forewarned.
We're recording this.
Again, it's Steve Pickett, current chair for the HRPB. Just here to give a quick little presentation on what we've been up to, what we're about in the last couple of months. So there's many different items that are heard by the HRPB. They span from new construction, exterior alterations, proposed ordinances, new LDRs, additions, variances, historic waivers, demolitions, and tax exemptions. Over half of them in the past year have been new construction, exterior alterations, or conceptual reviews. And though a lot of our items are for assessing appropriate windows, doors, roofing for criteria that fall outside what staff level review is able to do, we reviewed several items proposing demolition of derelict structures, followed by construction and replacement of those structures, along with additions to existing homes. So there's been a lot of activity on that, which is kind of nice to see. It's been great seeing the neighborhoods maintained in that regard, and we're happy to see that people are coming in and restoring some of these homes and adding on to them, that type of thing. On that note, we reviewed the proposed demolition and replacement of a house in College Park that is on the National Registry, which I thought was an interesting case. We were able to work with very cooperative applicants who are going to create 2 home sites, one of them being infill and the other being reconstruction of the existing house. So we were happy we were able to come to that kind of conclusion because we were quite concerned with losing that asset. Our board currently finds that one of the biggest challenges we currently face is balancing historic with historic needs and trends. We have districts that have both empty lots or lots where structures may be demolished. And so the assessment of what comes in to take up that space and how it fits in with the surrounding context is very important to us. Some of that pressure is due to the fact that there's a lot of housing stock in historic districts that are small homes or cottages, things like that. And the current trend is toward larger homes. So we're trying to balance that out. We have had a couple of cases where we feel we've resolved that adequately and come up with some creative solutions, especially with staff's help on suggestions on how we can go about that. But we really feel there's more work to be done on looking at how those things can be addressed and how we can balance those 2 things out. And finally, we're currently in the middle of our annual Historic Preservation Awards program. The nominations are going to close on April 7th, and we're hoping to announce the recipients on April 19th. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So that house was not, I got some emails about that one in College Park, the beautiful, it's not being demolished.
The original structure for the most part will be demolished. We had it assessed twice and it's structurally unsound. So, but the strategy right now is to rebuild it and try to, it's an official, it's under the historic preservation guidelines, it's considered a restoration or reconstruction.
Although
They have the pool and the behind. the
It
one
doesn't
part.
have a
It
pool.
didn't have a
No,
pool?
I
Okay,
believe
not the
it's,
house I'm thinking
no,
of.
there's a garage in behind there, but
Okay,
so it's a replication more so than actually being able to preserve it, but that was the best outcome that we could get with that particular item. But we're happy we got that because otherwise it would have just been gone altogether. So
Basically everything but the foundation being replaced.
yeah, I'm not sure on the specifics of what's going to be preserved, but
Okay.
yeah, they're going to do the best they can to itemize everything and just, try to put it back into place as best they can.
And that was based on the cost of making it whole versus demolishing it?
No, actually, we really looked at it because they'd already come in with their own assessment. And we asked them to go back and look again, as staff went out with them. We had several members of staff and professionals go out and look at it, and it's basically unsound altogether. There's a lot of structural damage to it. So,
So our folks did the same thing.
yeah.
Thank you for the work that you do. It's not easy. And I know that people come to you when they're in distress.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, my pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, just a question. Do the members or the board as a whole of the Historic Preservation Board, do you folks communicate with the State Bureau of Historic Preservation?
Not directly, no. We usually go through staff to have our communications that way. So,
I would just like to say, I happened to be in Tallahassee last week, helping with a lot of us to do some ask to the legislature. And one of the tables that was set up in the Capitol was the Bureau of Historic Preservation. So I talked to them at some length, and they seem to have quite a bit of available funds, and not piddly funds, but some noticeable funds for
Okay.
historic preservation.
okay.
And it alarms me a lot that we in our city, both the historic board, the staff, and I don't know, and maybe us, approved demolition of some historic number of historic buildings downtown.
Mhm.
And the whole point of a historic board is to find, leave no stone unturned to find, hey, are there ways that we can somehow avoid that?
Right.
And I would just like to be clear that for me, and I think I speak for many in the city, it's not just the historic value of a single building,
Mhm.
but it's how that building fits into the fabric of an area and how we
Correct.
preserve a historic district.
Yes,
Our
correct.
downtown is.
Context is very important.
So, I'm quite concerned with the decisions that have recently been made and hope that as you move forward, as any more come, demolition is definitely your last choice and that you don't approve it unless you've really looked into all possible grant
Yeah.
things and verified that they're all dead ends.
Well, we do consider all of them very carefully, and we are quite concerned with the context. The one reason we were able to act on that one particular home that I was speaking of is because it was on a national registry, so we had to be consulted. My understanding as buildings that aren't on the national registry that are just locally historic or whatnot, we basically are given a notification that it's going to happen, but we don't have any particular power to stop it from happening.
I think you always have the power of making a statement. Providing advice to the
Mhm.
commission, saying, hey, for these reasons, we don't think it's a good idea.
Right.
And here are some options that you might pursue to
Mhm.
avoid demolition and pursue.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, and we have looked at that too.
Generally,
We have
Excuse
been
me, I'm going
given,
to
sorry.
stop this right here. Usually we have very, if you want to have a conversation back and forth, I suggest you talk to each other in private, perhaps talk to the staff. This is usually with the presentation. It's just, thank you very much and we'll get
Okay.
back to you. But I think a debate like this right now is,
Part of the role of our.
well, I think we can talk to them in private. I think we
No,
can.
I
If,
don't. think-
Mr. McVoy, if you have an issue with the way the board's being run or the way the staff is dealing with things, I would suggest that you talk to the city manager, that you want to talk to the individual board members, but I don't think this is a public forum that this needs to be done. I think there's certainly ways to conduct oneself, but I think we generally don't get into back and forth discussions with someone that's volunteering for the board. So I would ask that we take that privately if you'd like to do that. Thank
And as
you.
a matter of principle, we put in place advisory boards to give us.
I don't disagree with that.
And that involves sometimes some
And I think
movement of information, both. directions.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm saying this might not be the forum. Thank you.
And those
Thank
things should be done in public. We cannot do them in private.
You certainly can.
So we cannot communicate.
Okay,
So-
thank you. Okay, anybody? All right, thank you very
Thank
much.
you
I
for
appreciate
your-
it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Mr. Cole.
Good afternoon. Happy to be up here in an official capacity for once and not
Good
on
evening,
some
as it were.
issue. Good evening, and not as a citizen pertaining an issue. I don't know if I have to say this, but 1616 North M Street. I'm guessing the laughter means no. Tonight I am representing the Planning and Zoning Advisory Board for this town. I will be going over some work we have been doing since October 19th. We have been assessing quite a few projects. I will be giving you 1 to 2 sentences in around 14 to 15. If there are any questions or comments on what we have been working with, please, I am certainly open to discuss them. That being said, I must make clear if I am representing the board or if I am unable to do so, then, then it would frankly be my own opinion, which I don't believe would be necessary, appropriate for this forum.
There's, like I just said, I mean, there's certainly places that we can inquire. We know where you live.
It's true, on record.
All right.
Just for the sake of clarification, just any questions, comments, follow-up, just to ensure that you're understanding the statement that I am making.
Thank you.
Of course. So with that in mind, I'm going to take you back to October 19th, where we addressed the LDR, the Land Development Regulation Amendment Reviews and Recommendations. We did pass this. We passed to reduce the minimum setback of high and medium density multifamily housing to a minimum of 5 feet. Again, this was for medium and high density housing to allow more flexibility in the placement of accessory structures and pools. Staff did indicate that this would be a benefit to ADUs as well, but does not pertain to single family zoning. Next up, we did address some conditional use permits, specifically in regards to Sunbelt, a new tool rental company that is going to be opening at the city at the advice of city staff, and that's at 1800 Aragorn Avenue. We provided a variance to Happy Car Sales, a car dealership, South Dixie Highway, so that they could install an appropriate fence, which was necessary for their self-described security purposes. And this also did encourage them accepting a landscaping plan, which the board felt would add some beautification to that specific stretch of South Dixie.
Is it 821?
Say again?
821 South Dixie?
820. Thank you very much. Karen always coming in. I know she is. Next up was a major site plan with a conditional use permit and sustainability bonus incentive program. And this was for Lake Worth Storage, which is at 2202 Lake Worth Road. If you're heading north on Lake Osborne Road, it's pretty much directly across the street from you to the left. It is a rather large approximately 99,000 square foot self-storage facility that will be going in there from a local developer that was approved. On November 2nd, we heard 4 separate mural applications. These applications were all approved, only with some minimal changes. 1032 North Dixie, that is the new photo company across from the Walgreens, the former funeral home. It was approved there. At 504 Lake Avenue, which is Mountain Space, the art gala downtown at Emmon Lake, that was approved. 522 Lucerne, which is the new Subculture Group restaurant at the former CWS, currently unnamed, I believed. And then also at 130 South H, which is Matthews Brewing. Matthews Brewing was the only mural that had some sort of variation requested from the board, as there was advertising type language, which we felt necessary to remove, specifically live music venue and craft brewery. That specific line of text was requested to be removed. On November 16th, we had plan development and review recommendations for the residences at Lake Worth. This is an 18-unit multifamily development at 7 North B Street. That is the vacant property just east of the Lake Worth Circle. That was approved. There was a major site plan with conditional use permit and sustainability bonus incentive program application, which was the Perch. However, that was postponed to the next meeting. Coming right up. December 14th of 2022, we faced a variance regarding a residential fence height. In addition, there was also a major site plan with a conditional use permit and sustainability bonus incentive program application. Once again, that is the Perch, the Village Flats, and the Village Flats 2. The variance requested to create a fence for the, I'm sorry, I went a little off guard here. To go back one moment, the variance regarding the residential fence, the variance requested to create a fence for a privacy for a front yard pool. This is actually the only citizen concern brought to the board item that we've had in the last several months. The citizen submitted concern over the installation of this fence, but at the end of the day, even if we agreed with the petitioning citizen, we, the board, would have not had the power to, in fact, address their concern. So with that in mind, we found it simple enough to approve the request for the fencing variance. And then also we did move on to that major site plan for the Perch, the Village Flats, and the Village Flats 2, which are some new construction, which will be happening on this side of town between Lake and Lucerne. On January 18th, we received a citizen application regarding a variance for a residential shed. However, that was proposed to the next meeting. We also received a mural application. This was a mural requested at the Bohemian at 101 South East Coast Street. On February 1st, that variance for the residential shed returned. Very nice citizen. The citizen requested a variance to install the shed in her front yard. It was approved subject to landscaping being installed, so it would be blocked. Given the parameters of the property, installing it in the backyard was simply not reasonable, and installing it in the front yard was not to any concerns, plight, or anything in between for neighbors, in addition to the agreement for landscaping. In addition, we also addressed the LDR ordinance, the Affordable Workplace Housing Ordinance, which was reviewed and approved. Pardon me, yep, exactly. Personal comments, but no, that was reviewed and reviewed and approved by the board. On March 1st of 2023, there was the conditional use permit, and that CUP was granted for Scooter Avenue, which is a scooter sales company, which will be opening at 1914 North Dixie Highway. Pretty much right on Dixie, just in College Park. There was some concerns by the board about possible things like, people test driving scooters on residential streets and parkings and things like that. But that was all hashed out. There won't be any test driving of those scooters or anything like that. So it'll be in a strictly interior, the building sales business. And then last but not least, this is our most recent item. The city initiated the rezoning review recommendation for the For the Children lease. at 1718 South Douglas Street. I will not go too deep into this, but I will say there is some fantastic history behind that property. That history was the first school for people of color in the city. It was essentially the first segregated school, which was long overdue, as at the time African-American children had to find a way bus, but most likely no buses available, down to Del Rey. And with the access of that, allowed education in that aspect of this town, in this part of this town here. And it was rezoned to a public zoning district, which allows a lot more flexibility for the school expansion and everything in between. So that is a summary of the 15 projects that we have addressed over since the October 19th meeting. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, or anything in between, I'm happy to hear them and take them to the board.
Thank you. That was very well organized, Mr. Cole. I'm very
I do my
impressed.
best.
Thank you. And please go back to the board with us again, thanking. I mean, every time I think about what it takes to keep this train running, all the moving parts and all the people that are involved, and most of it's invisible and very time consuming and takes effort. So thank you very much. And please send our thanks back.
Of course.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Now we have 3 proclamations. The first one is the Lord's Place. It is every year the Lord's Place has a day of recognizing homelessness and the terrible problem that we have. On this year, it's March 31st, Friday. They're having their sleep out. It's at Roger Dean Stadium this year. We have pamphlets up here. You can go, you can spend the night at Roger Dean, and it sounds like a really good event. It starts at 5:30 on the 31st and it ends at 7 a.m. for breakfast. Through a proclamation. Whereas homelessness is a serious social and economic issue impacting all levels of our society. And whereas the city of Lake Worth Beach and the Lord's Place recognize that all people deserve respect and a place to call home. And whereas the city of Lake Worth Beach and the Lord's Place are partners in providing that respect and pathway to a brighter future for men, women, and families who are homeless in our community. And whereas the city of Lake Worth Beach extends its appreciation to the Lord's Place for its leadership on this critical social issue and its wide array of successful programs and services changing the lives of the homeless one life at a time. And whereas the Lord's Place will hold its 16th annual Sleep Out to End Homelessness on Friday, March 31st through Saturday, April 1st at Roger Dean Stadium in Jupiter. Whereas everyone from every walk of life is invited to Sleep Out 2023 to actively engage in hands-on volunteer opportunities and increase awareness of unhoused individuals and families and focus on the programs and services needed to end homelessness. And whereas the Lord's Place and the city of Lake Worth Beach recognize the many community members supporting Sleep Out, including the Honorable Ann Brown, who acknowledges that sleeping out under the stars on the ball field is optional, but dedicating the night to ending homelessness is essential. And whereas the mission of the Lord's Place is to break the cycle of homelessness by providing innovative, compassionate, and effective services to men, women, and children in our community. Now, therefore, I, Betty Resch, Mayor of the City of Lake Worth Beach, by virtue of the authority vested in me, and on behalf of the Commission, do hereby proclaim March 31st, 2023, as the Lord's Place Sleep Out to End Homelessness Awareness Day. And I have signed it. Thank you.
And I would add to that, I have participated in that in the past, and it's the evening ceremonies and stories from the presenter are wonderful, even if you don't decide not to sleep out. It's a very cool event.
No, it sounds and a good organization. Okay, next we have March is National Ethics Awareness Month, which is not to say that the other 11 months are exempt. I just want to put that on the record. Whereas ethics is a set of values that consistently guides our behavior and is applied to government is essential in the proper conduct and operation of the government. And whereas ethical values guide public officials to be independent and impartial so that their actions can easily be seen to encompass ethical behaviors consistent with established standards of conduct as they provide important governmental services. And whereas Palm Beach County was identified as a leader in ethics reform and received a national award for its focus on the importance of ethics and has implemented the Palm Beach County Code of Ethics through the continued partnership and support of all municipalities that have adopted it countywide through a referendum. And whereas on December 7th, 2010, the city of Lake Worth Beach adopted the Palm Beach County Code of Ethics and Commission on Ethics ordinances by referendum. And whereas the city of Lake Worth Beach challenges and invites all members and community leaders to join in learning more about the ethics movement in Palm Beach County and to strive for ethical actions in all aspects of their daily life. Now, therefore, I, Betty Resch, Mayor of the City of Lake Worth Beach, Florida, by virtue of the authority vested in me and on behalf of the City Commission, do hereby proclaim March 2023 as Ethics Awareness Month. And I have signed it and sealed it. And there's actually, for elected officials, there are ethics courses required that we have to take. It's a 4-hour course every year, and you learn a lot. You think you're ethical, and then they teach you how to be ethical. It's a lot to learn. Now, we have, the last one is Florida Bicycle Month. And whereas Lake Worth Beach residents and we have a lot of bicyclers in our community. Whereas the city of Lake Worth Beach residents and visitors engage in bicycling as a viable and environmentally sound form of transportation and an excellent form of physical activity and recreation. And whereas the state of Florida designates March as Bicycle Month and Palm Beach County will recognize it locally. And whereas Florida Bicycle Month features a number of fitness opportunities and events for riders of all ages to enjoy throughout the month at various parks and locations throughout Palm Beach County. And whereas the recognition of Florida Bicycle Month will raise awareness of bicycling and ultimately promote physical activity and healthy lifestyles by elevating bicycling as a more widely accepted choice of transportation. And whereas the Palm Beach Transportation Planning Authority plans and recommends projects to make bicycling more accessible and promotes comprehensive community education efforts aimed at improving bicycle safety. And whereas Palm Beach County has an ever-expanding designated or enhanced bicycle lane network with over 250 miles of existing and 745 miles of planned facilities to create a safe, connected system of bicycle infrastructure. Now, therefore, I, Betty Resch, Mayor of the City of Lake Worth Beach, Florida, by virtue of the authority vested in me and on behalf of the City Commission, do hereby proclaim March 2023 as Florida Bicycle Month. In witness whereof, I have hereto set my hand and caused the seal of the City of Lake Worth Beach to be affixed this 21st day of March 2023. And Mr. Diaz is our representative on the TPA. And let me take this opportunity. There is the transportation TPA. And what I've recently learned is there is an opportunity, there's a citizen council, a part of that, which we don't have a representative from. So we're going to be opening up our city boards. We're going to have interviews for the openings and boards and things, and that's going to be added. So those of you who are interested in transportation and how we get around the city and around the county, I urge you to apply for that position. You can, I'm going to direct you to Commissioner Diaz, because he's our representative on the TPA, and I'm sure would be very helpful with any questions that you may have. It's an important part. And I had a conversation, I think we all are having conversations with WGI about the mobility plan for the city, which we are in work on now. I'm a member of the Florida League of Cities Legislative Committee, and we have said mobility plans are our number one focus for this legislative committee, and we'll be up there in a couple of weeks to talk about that. But I'm learning a lot about mobility plans. So thank you. Okay. Now we have commission liaison reports and comments. And why don't we start with two?
That would be me.
That would be you.
I have just two areas. They might be a little bit long, but they're both very, I think, important things. So I'd like to jump in on them. Number one, I'd like to thank my fellow decision makers up here for the recent unanimous vote to set carbon emission goals for a utility. That said, many of you probably know that the International Panel on Climate Change just came out with I believe it's their 5-year report on Monday. So what we voted on is in the right direction and not enough. The report indicates that we are likely to blow past the 1.5 degrees Celsius target by the early 2030s. That's coming right up. The chair of that, I believe it's from South Korea, has stated we are at a critical moment in history. Interestingly, the report, although it is very alarming, it also points out that the world has all the knowledge, tools, and financial resources to achieve climate goals. And the report includes a lot of sort of how to guide information to diffuse what they call the climate time bomb. The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, who has been very, very active on this issue, he really sees it as one of the driving forces for the future of the world. points out that the rich countries have a bigger responsibility to act faster and suggests that the developed countries, including the US, should eliminate our carbon emissions by 2040. We said we'd do it by 2045, so we're not far off, but we need to keep going. And he has an interesting quote, because some people say, well, you know what the US does, it doesn't make any difference. Other countries aren't doing it. He points out, demanding that others move first only ensures humanity comes last. We don't have a moment to lose. I think he's right on target. My second comment is personal in a sense. I'm labeling it observations from Tallahassee. On May 10th, 1940, foreign planes came over about 5 kilometers from where my grandmother lived and dropped bombs. That was the start of Nazi Germany invading the Netherlands, and the country capitulated within a few days. In 1999, Hugo Chavez was legitimately elected in Venezuela. Within 6 months, he had taken over the federal Supreme Court and installed his own supportive federal legislature. Political prisoners started getting jailed right and left and continue to be jailed. 8 million Venezuelans have left the country to other parts of the world. In 1991, I traveled to Nicaragua shortly after the very much needed Sandinista revolution that brought in Daniel Ortega more than 40 years ago. 40 years later, I have spoken with the wife of somebody who ran against Daniel Ortega, who he promptly jailed, along with a lot of other people. The press in Nicaragua is basically non-existent and operate from outside of the country. Dictatorship is very personal for me. I've had various opportunities to be very close to it. So for years, I've read both Dutch and German literature trying to understand from the inside, how did a people, in this case in Germany, who are very educated, very knowledgeable, slide down a slippery slope that led eventually to the killing of millions of Jews, Romani, Sinti, and homosexuals? I still don't have an answer to how that slide happened, but it's something that I think about a lot. I think the scariest part about it is it's a slide and it can happen quite quickly. From what I saw in Tallahassee and what I continue to see in Tallahassee, I think we must be very, very, very vigilant. And I'll close with a quote from Desmond Tutu. If we are neutral in situations of injustice, we have chosen the side of the oppressor. And those are my comments.
Thank you. And I think that boils down to one very, very important word: vote.
That's certainly a good piece of it, yes.
District 3. Commissioner Stokes.
Hi, yes, I just wanted to piggyback on something the Vice Mayor said about something I was rereading recently about the way we talk about climate change. I was also seeing that, you know, we have 2023, we have like early 2030s. That's right around the corner. About in America, we measure things in Fahrenheit. The rest of the world uses Celsius. So when we talk about 1.5 degrees Celsius, and if we convert that to Fahrenheit, it helps us make a little more sense about it.
2.7.
2.7, which is like a fever. So if you really think about what happens to your body when it raises 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit, that can help put things into perspective. So I just wanted to add that. I was also in Tallahassee with you and the Vice Mayor and Commissioner Malega last week. So I was not at Thursday, I was not available to try to meet with constituents at Cafe Tycoon. So my next one would be next Thursday, March 30th, which is also the night, I believe we are having our District 2 public forum
Right.
at the church.
At the, what used to be the Scottish Rites, it's now the Haitian Fenial Baptist Church at where the water tower is, corner of Worthmore, 22nd and D Street.
Right, and that's at 6
60.
o'clock. Right, so I'm still gonna head over to Cafe Tycoon that Thursday in case anybody wants some smaller one-on-one or three-on-one time.
Same time?
No,
Oh.
I go there from 5:45, and then I, just like with the
I would
state of the
miss
city address.
the other part.
Nope, I'll go there if anybody needs to swing by for the first 45 minutes to talk in a more casual setting. March 30th, I will be at Cafe Tycoon at 5, and then I'll leave at 5:45 to head over to the District 2 Forum. So I'm looking forward to that. We're in Tallahassee, talking to all of our legislatures about our funding needs here, especially along the golf course and the flooding stuff. So looking forward to getting some money out of them. On Thursday, I just want to give an update on House Bill 1 since I was still there Thursday before my flight left. So House Bill 1 was the expansion of school voucher program. And we were able to just sit there and kind of watch the whole thing happen. So it's very interesting to kind of watch that at work. There were there's concerns that the more money we put into private schools through this voucher program will take away from the public schools. There were a lot of amazing amendments I felt like were offered up to try to, mitigate some of the concerns, but all of them were shut down, I think, on mostly party lines. But one that was suggested was to cap the income limit for vouchers at 500% of the federal poverty level. So if you make more than 500% of the federal poverty level, you don't need a voucher for private education, but that was shut down. There was another one that was suggested to remove the option to use these voucher funds for Florida prepaid college. So, this is a K-12 source of money and pulling that away for Florida prepaid college, but that was shut down. This was the saddest one for me to see shot down and didn't seem to be very even considered by some of the members up there. They wanted to require a private school to inform a parent of a voucher eligible who has an IEP, a special education plan, or an English language learner 501(4) plan of what modifications or accommodations would be honored. So right now, if you have an IEP and you're in a public school, you have to receive those services. And we taxpayers pay that school more money to provide those services. So instead of paying $7,000 to $9,000 per pupil, we might pay $20,000 to $30,000 per pupil. That follows the student to whatever school they go in. But definitely private schools are not required to honor any of those services. This amendment was going to just say, when that parent brings you their student and all that money over to your private school into this voucher program, you need to sit down with them and let them know what they're signing away, what you as a private school are actually able to give them and what you're not. Just very transparent. You're taking your kid out of public school, bringing them over here. This is what you're giving up. The private school is still getting that money, not even considered. So that amendment didn't make it on. So that was sad to see. And there were some amendments that were proposed to try to, if our tax dollars are going to private schools, that they should have the same accountability. Maybe they should have to publish their school library books online for the whole world to scrutinize. Maybe they should have the same testing standards as our public schools instead of some other norm reference test. Just being anything to do, it was stated over and over again, anything to do with the private school's content or curriculum not being considered. So the money's going there. They don't have any of the extra accountability or transparency or other things that we have to, or accommodations to children with special needs that we have to do. So, I personally was not in favor of this bill. I thought there were a lot of good amendments proposed to try to make it less painful, but they were all down. So it passed.
Yeah.
So that's my update.
Not so hard. Commissioner Diaz.
I'll try to work in some good news after that.
The end of the world and climate change.
Yeah, I appreciate a talk on climate warming because it's happening and we're already seeing the effects. Those of my day job is running an environmental nonprofit. One of the things I do is wildlife tagging, specifically for horseshoe crabs, and we're seeing really novel. This is an animal that's been around for 450 million years unchanged. And in recent years, we just made a fairly novel discovery that their behavior in our area is, in one particular area, is entirely different. And it might be the potential is it might be they're adapting to sea level rise. And because they've been around for a while, so they might have things
They're
a little bit
adaptable.
figure it out than we do. But there are things that, as we as humans are doing to address that. And I try to move us away from the doom and gloom, from especially like that report and whatnot, and progress is being made. And something to point out is the TPA meeting. Like for example, I had the governing board TPA meeting last week, and one of the things that was discussed is the TPA Vision 2050, which is the long range transportation plan. And this is like, it's a mobility plan, and it's a really long-term mobility plan. It's looking 30 years in the future. So if you can imagine how difficult that is to predict, like think about way back then, 30 years ago in 1993, and think about what cars and cell phones look like, and then imagine, the other end of that spectrum. And so this plan gets updated every 5 years. And one of the things that really stood out to me, typically on transportation plans that far in the future, because it's a lot of like grasping, right? There's only so much you can predict on technology. So there's always a lot of talk on where are self-driving cars going to be, and do we got a plan for that and whatnot?
Crashed into a wall.
Right. Wrap around a tree. One of the things that stood out to me, and I think it didn't stand out to a lot of people in the room, but I think it did after I highlighted it. One of the bullet points that TPA and we're looking at is, for the first time in the history of this long range transportation plan, one of the things that's being factored in are things like housing equity and justice. And I definitely come from the school of thought that no matter what the issue is, whether it's environmental, whether it's economic, socioeconomic, any of these problems, many of these problems can be addressed through the humble area of law called land use law and planning and foresight and that sort of thing. So and I'm happy that we were noticed, because my comments on that on the TPA, factoring in things like housing affordability and equity and social justice in transportation planning, because we often talk about how the most systemically discriminated group in this country is arguably disabled, and especially mobility disabled. So to factor that in, finally, and address these issues long term at its core, is exciting. And I think I'm happy to be up here, and I'm happy that Lake Worth and this town is ahead of the game between our housing study with FAU, between our mobility study with WGI. We're already addressing that and intertwining those systems together. So progress is being made, maybe not as fast as we often like to be, but we're getting there.
Thank you. And I don't have too much yet. Sarah and I were up there for a few days, and then we were joined by Commissioner McFoy, the four Musketeers walking through the halls of Tallahassee, which are long and lots of steps. It was a challenge, but it's interesting to see how it works. And the good news is we think we have good support. We have one right now. We have one ask to the legislature for funds, which is $350,000 to do the section 2 of the Parrot Cove Water Project, which is the outfall, so that the salt water doesn't come back in, helps with the flooding on the golf course. And it looks like that's something that we will be successful in, and we will update you on that. Another thing, one of the things that I heard, and you really could just sit there day after day and listen to these things being argued. It's very interesting if you have the time and inclination to do it. Short-term rentals, which are, something that's been on the city plate for the past 10 years. They're starting, there's a movement. I don't know where it is right now, but there's a bill trying to be introduced to allow the cities to have just a little more control, a little more for registration, very, very limited, but something. So, as that's one of the things that we're talking about, it'll be interesting to see how that works out. I don't want to take up more time. I think that we, it's a great team that we have here. And I just want to make sure that everyone knows how much we support our staff and how hard they work. The longer I'm here, the more I learn about how the sausage is made, as they say. And it's all done behind closed doors, and it's all done we have an amazing staff. We have very high quality people, and I just want to thank them again, and also again to the volunteers that work for our city. It doesn't happen without a lot of work. So thank you, everyone that puts their effort towards this noble gesture, this noble thing that we've got going here. So with that, city manager, do you have any report?
I'm sorry, Madam Mayor. We have lost the video. So if Alfonso can see what's going on, it looks like the camera is off.
Uh-oh. Oh, my goodness. We don't, Reggie, did you unplug the camera?
What?
Alfonso's coming.
Okay, Alfonso's gonna be coming up to take care of it. There we go. Here's our savior, our hero. So do you want to carry on anyway?
Yes, yes.
We're switching to audio only for a few minutes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just one item. I won't belabor the moment. We have a number of issues to get to. But just to let you know that I did attend the conversations with the deputy, which was held at the South Beach Cafe on the 16th, I believe. And so I had a good time talking with residents and hanging with the deputies. And one of the things that was shown off to the residents was the body cameras.
Ah,
Yeah, so as you know, all the deputies are wearing body cameras now.
all of
and
them or some of them?
Most of them. We have a few people out
Okay.
and they have not received theirs yet. Some on leave, some on medical, but they will be trained and receive their body cameras. But they are wearing body
That's wonderful.
cameras and cameras in the vehicles, correct, Captain Baird? So I wanted to make sure everyone knew that. So we're excited. We waited a while for that to happen. So they're here. So I want to announce that. But other than that, a few things were announced already. So I'll
Yeah, and it was, I remember when we first got elected, it was Commissioner Malega that pushed really hard to have them. And I wanted, even though she's out sick with the cold I gave her, I feel so guilty about that. I want to just give her that public recognition that she was the one that really did push
Right.
for them.
Commissioner Robinson pushing.
Oh,
really
okay.
hard for that. And I don't think Captain Bayer ever got to come up here without Commissioner Robinson asking about the,
Where is the body camera?
yeah.
was my first phone call.
Commissioner Robinson was your first phone call? Is that what he said? Yeah.
And I just, one more thing, just before we go, this is a big weekend for Lake Worth Beach, Pride Weekend. The Pride Fest opens on Saturday in Bryant Park and it's fun-filled. And then on Sunday is the parade starting at around 11 o'clock and it starts in the traditional Federal Highway in Lucerne. Yeah, okay. So it's one of our all around the city parades and I've participated in it a few times. I think we all have, and it's a lot of fun. So welcome all of you to come to our Pride Weekend. Okay, now we have public participation of non-agenda items, and I have Ms. Fisher is here, and Mr. Simons, is that you? I honestly, sorry, can't read your handwriting. Is this a non-agenda item that you want to talk about? Okay, so Peggy Fisher, and then Mr. Simons. And then Peggy Adams.
Peggy Adams, both.
No.
Peggy Fisher, 508 North A Street. Just a side note, I'm a resident in District 2 and reached out to a fellow resident in District 2. Neither one of us know anything about a public district forum going on March 30th. So, each of you swore to uphold the charter of the city when you were sworn in. So this is Article 3, Section 6, subsection B of the city charter. It's titled Interference with Administration. Except for the purpose of inquiries and investigation, the city commission or its members shall deal with city officers and employees who are subject to the direction and supervision of the city manager solely through the city manager. And neither the city commission, nor its members shall give orders to any such officer or employee, either publicly or privately. Nothing in the foregoing is to be construed to prohibit individual members of the city commission from closely scrutinizing by questions and personal observation all aspects of city government operations, so as to obtain independent information to assist the members in the formulation of sound policies to be considered by the City Commission. It is the express intent of this charter, however, that recommendations for improvement in city government operations by individual commissioners shall be made to and through the city manager. I'll repeat, be made to and through the city manager, so that the manager may coordinate efforts of all departments to achieve the greatest possible savings for the most efficient and sound means available. Too many things are being directed directly at staff. Do this, do that. That's not your ability to do that. You go to the city manager. You don't send somebody something and copy the city manager. You go to the city manager. That's what the charter says. That's what you swore to abide by. And with all due respect, you need to do what you swore to abide when you took this office that you hold now. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Simon. Does anyone else have a public comment for non-agenda items that doesn't have a blue card? I just want to call it once.
Hello, Lee Simons, 202 South Federal. So on a positive note, I just wanted to mention I found a literal a situation where the landowner had removed the plumbing out of one of the apartments right in my neighborhood. It was really smelly and I happened to walk by there, but the toilet was out on the street. And you can see the trail of flow going from the sewer down, flowing into the gutter. But I just wanted to, I reached out to Judith Love. She responded. I sent her emails and pictures. She responded immediately, had a crew out there, started to clean up, but it was just a literal crap show. The second note is we use the bridge every day, either walking or riding a bike. And I noticed they did a survey on the bridge about a year or so ago, and they left the survey nails in the bridge. It's in the bike lane. So going over the bridge on the water side, on the ocean side, the nails are still left in. I mentioned it. And again, I mentioned it to the crew, when I see them. You guys left the bridge, survey nails in the bridge. And, anyway, it's been months and they're still there.
That would be DOT. We have no.
I checked. I was like, who has jurisdiction over the bridge? And I let those guys know they don't care. So anyway,
Are they sticking up? Is that the deal?
Yeah, they're in the bike lane and they're actually in the bridge on the downside, when you're headed to the water, there's two of them. So
It's just more challenging. It's like a slalom course.
I know, but to bicycle riders, it's it's real bad. So I guess DOT would be the next call.
Yeah, maybe.
All right.
I see Miss Davis making a note.
Thank you so much. That's awesome. Appreciate you.
And I gotta say, Mr. Chairman, thank you. We really haven't seen you. Thank you for coming up and telling us something that we did right.
Oh, no, it definitely got to start on a positive note or try to keep it on a positive note.
And we appreciate it.
Yes, for sure.
Thank you.
See you.
Come back again. Okay, approval of minutes. We have approval of minutes. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve?
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Motion passes. Okey-doke. Now we are on ordinance number 2023-02, first reading. Mr. Attorney, would you read the ordinance, please?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Ordinance number 2023-02 is an ordinance of the City of Lake Worth Beach, Florida, amending Chapter 23, Section 23.2-39 Affordable Workforce Housing Program, providing for clarification on combination of incentives, qualifications for affordability, and participation in other entity programs, and providing for additional affordability buy-down provisions, providing for severability, conflicts, codification, and an effective date.
Thank you. I think we have a presentation from our Community Sustainability Department.
Yes, good evening, William Waters, Community Sustainability Director. It's going to be a fairly short presentation. This is a little bit of a cleanup item from when you originally approved the program back late last year. You had mentioned to me about having a provision to allow for negotiations to have various units be more affordable. So this provision adds a buy down provision that would reduce the overall household income limits on the various unit types by 15%. If you go to this is the parts that are included in it. There's a housing incentive payment schedule. And also when those units are negotiated to be more affordable, the deed restriction that you put in place in the ordinance remains at 25 years. You can go to the next slide. Thanks. So for a studio unit, the maximum household income is now capped at 30%, and then it goes 50% for one bedroom, 70 for two, and then on up. The payments that are made are also a derivative of the median household income, which is the next slide. So to buy down a studio for an additional 25 years at a 15% reduction in the gross median household income costs $40,000.
I'm going to stop you.
Mhm.
Because I read through this, I thought, who's buying down who? Who's giving money to who?
The city is
Thank you.
giving the developer the money to buy down the affordability of the unit. Right now, our ordinance, our program requires that the cap on the, say the studio was 45% of the median household income
Uh-huh.
through a one-time payment based on the median household income, which right now is like $40,000, $45,000. That studio its median household income can be reduced to 30% for the 25 years.
And that would reduce the rent.
Reduce the rent, yes.
And where does the money come from?
It can come from a variety of sources. That's on a slide coming up.
Oh, okay. And I have one more question. It's somewhere I read that the rent can't go more than 30% of, as we go to these. I'm a little confused about it. It's a lot of words. And I realize that this is not a new thing. It's what we voted on last time, and I
What we-
apologize.
Under the regulations that we have, we feel that a household should not spend more than 30% of its income toward its rent or purchase of a home. So we've got provisions in that. We're not changing very much. We're just
Right.
providing a buy down incentive. Now, one thing that did come up, you can go to the next slide and you can see where the money could come from. It could come from our Affordable Housing Program Trust Fund, which has no money in it yet, but it might. The Sustainable Bonus Incentive Program, and as well as the Transfer Development Rights Program. Both of those programs have about $500,000 each in them. And there are two projects due to make payments to the Sustainable Bonus that are coming up. And there may be monies from the county. We don't preclude the county providing the subsidy to buy the units down. And then also it was in the paper that the state has approved or gone back to the housing trust and given quite a bit of money. So we could use that money as well. Now, one thing that came up was a question from the public, and I'll just address this, is that under our micro unit program, a micro unit only counts as 3/4 of a dwelling unit. So the numbers that are in here, if it were a micro unit, would be 0.75 of that. So a studio that's under a micro unit would be 0.75 of 30% if it were bought down. And I can explain that individually later, but that phone call came in later today. So we would not count a micro unit as equal to a full dwelling unit. So that a micro unit could actually be more affordable than 30% of the median household income. And then there's some other housekeeping items to clarify participation of other programs. And we had a little clerical error where we just did not catch all the changes from the first reading to the second reading of the program when it came to the 25-year covenant on the properties. So, and they both received recommendations of approval from the two advisory reports.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McVoy.
Maybe it's because we all got colds or whatever, but I'm feeling a little dense. Could you explain the buy down idea in different words, just to make sure that I understand it and maybe. it's
Okay,
like-
based on all the numbers that we ran, there is a limit to the number of affordable units a developer could really produce and actually break even or make any money. So to have them be more affordable, the developer will need an influx of some sort of cash, very similar to low-income housing credits, the exchange program from the county, other such mechanisms. So this provision allows for negotiation to take place between the city and the developer to encourage the developer to receive some money from the city or other sources to reduce the rental limits for the various types of units being provided.
And that's what you mean by buy.
Yeah.
Okay,
So we're
thank you. That's very
helping
helpful.
pay for the construction a little bit. I mean,
Right.
Yeah.
Or the fact that they're going to be losing, they're going to be making less money on that unit. So we'll have some that will participate in the program, but if the money that comes in or is available from both the housing bond and from the state or is available. I think how we've written this, it both could be utilized to buy down units. We either will get a greater percentage of units that meet the program requirements, or we will have additional units that are already required being more affordable, or a combination of both.
Cool.
That's
Thank you.
great.
That's very helpful.
That's
Right,
great.
so right now, just to even to clarify for the public, because I think a lot of people understand that the workforce housing program by itself isn't going to hit a lot of the needs of the residents that we have here, and just most residents, because the area median income of the county is something like $90,000. And so currently, we require 15% of certain developments to be basically that in that workforce category, which is all we felt like we could require of a developer and have them stay whole. So this gives us an opportunity to try to broaden our reach to help more people.
Yeah.
Well, also our program does provide a range of the unit types that
Mhm.
are affordable. So a household of lesser income, and if it's a smaller household, might be able to get into a studio or one bedroom, whereas they might want a 2-bedroom one, but in order to do that, they're going to have to require a subsidy. So we're trying to touch as many people as we possibly can to provide housing, but unless other programs come into play, the federal income tax credits and sort of things like that, it's very difficult to get to housing, especially for a family of 4 who has a household income of like $45,000, $50,000, because they're going to need either a 2 or a 3-bedroom unit. And their ability to pay is around $1,500, $1,600 max a month.
Right.
And to have someone build a unit and have that rental return be the return is practically impossible. Because there are other factors in play that I'm sure are going to come out in your housing study that are also making housing unaffordable, which includes tax, repair and maintenance, ongoing expenses, and also property insurance.
Yeah. And we are, I think we all as a commission are very trying to be as proactive as we possibly can to make housing as affordable. We talk about affordable housing, but $1,900 for a 2-bedroom apartment or 1-bedroom apartment sometimes isn't really, this is probably not the right word to use, but I want cheap house. We're looking for cheaper housing. So thank you very much. Do I have a motion?
Yes, motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank
Passes
you.
unanimously. Thank you very much. Moving right along. There's 2 ordinances now that are sort of combined, but we're going to do them separately. 2023-3. First reading of that one, Mr. Attorney.
Thank you. Ordinance number 2023-03 of the city of Lake Worth Beach, Florida, amending the city's comprehensive plan, future land use map through a small scale map amendment from the future land use FLU designation of public recreation and open space, PROS, to the public P FLU designation on the property, generally located at the east side of South Douglas Avenue, west of the FEC Railway, south of Latana Avenue, and North Hillbreath Drive at 1718 South Douglas Street, and more particularly described in Exhibit A, providing the conflicting ordinances are repeal, severability, and providing an effective date.
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, it's unanimous. Reggie's back there. That's
Oh,
why
wait, do
you.
we have any public comment?
Madam Clerk, thank you. I forget that. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment on this one?
We do not.
Okay, thank you. Now moving right along the same lines, we have ordinance number 2023-04, which is in the same vein. Would you read that, please?
Sure. Ordinance number 2023-04 of the city of Lake Worth Beach, Florida, amending the city's official zoning map from the zoning district of public recreation and open space, PROS, to public P on the properties generally located at the east side of South Douglas Street, west of the FEC Railway, south of Latana Avenue, and North Hillbrook Avenue at 1718 South Douglas Street, more particularly described in Exhibit A, providing the conflicting ordinance of repeal, providing severability, and providing an effective date.
Thank you very much. And I see Ms. Reggie's background that I have no cards. Madam Clerk, do you have any public comment cards?
I do not, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. And although Ms. Reggie has not filled out a public comment card,
We just let her come.
we can let her come and say a few words if you'd like. And she brought some folks with her who we love and we are so happy to see. And we're very glad to be able to do this for the children today.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and all the commissioners and our city manager. Before I want to say
Just say
really
your
thank you.
name, because not everybody knows you.
Hi, my name is Regina Jones. I'm the founder and CEO for the children, and we are located at 1718 South Douglas Street. Before I even say anything, I really want to say thank you to the planning and zoning staff. You guys have been so kind and walked me through the process. Mr. William, Anita, and all your staff, you guys have been so friendly, which make it easier to learn because I'm not a building person, but to have the staff really working side by side to guide us to the process, it really make a big difference. And I want you guys to really applaud your staff. They work very hard. And I wish when I started 10 years ago, we had people just like them. They really make things easier. And I don't know what else to say. Well, I can say we are one step closer. We did apply for the grant to the state. We did receive the $100 million grant. And I already received, a quarter of that reinvestment already. But in order for us to get the building moving, we need to work hand in hand with the city. And I'm so glad that you guys are on board. And at this time, we have in our budget close to $2 million to get the first phase of the building built. But I know we're going to need more, and I'm going to need each one of you to use your magic and talk to the people up there and down there to get us the fund that we need to make this part of Liquid a place where all of us are happy to live around there.
Yeah.
That's what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for all you do for the children in our community. You've done wonderful work. And I think, was it Commissioner Diaz, you went in a little of the history. The building that you're in
Yes.
was the original building that was when things were segregated. That was the only place that Black kids could go to school. I love the fact that it's now being used to advance, our kids and our community and strengthen that. So thank you for all.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for coming in tonight. All right,
Just so you
So
know.
we need a
you do-
motion to,
we need a motion. Picky, we need a motion. I think we did that. Motion, do
We don't have a motion. Motion to approve?
we have a second?
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.
Just a note, both of these items will come back for second reading on April 4th.
Uh-huh.
And then the small scale will be transmitted for recordation to the state of Florida after that and won't become effective for 30 days. I know Ms. Reggie's working with her team on submitting their site plan application, and we're looking forward to receiving that soon. And I also wanted to mention what I was going to bring up in the presentation is that the Osborne School was as you mentioned, a very special school to the community. The Osborne addition was the segregated area of the city, and the school was developed because kids were being bused to Delray. And so it was a local school in the heart of the community. It is also on the National Register of Historic Places, and part of the grant that Ms. Reggie has, it will honor the historic context of the school. And we're going to be working with her team on developing an interactive type historic component to the redevelopment of the school.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you.
Historic marker. There's funds for them.
Well, we're hoping to do a little bit more because she received a grant for that, is to do something a little more interactive and educational because it's an educational facility. So
Even better.
Thank you so much. No, I remember when you first started coming to the city in the 90s, long time ago. Okay, so we are on to unfinished business. Unfinished business is a discussion. We're going to have a discussion about the L&M project. And would you like to make a presentation?
Yes. Madam Mayor, William Waters, Community Sustainability Director. Again, Valentina, and I'm not going to try to pronounce her last name, is here as well. She's back there. She
Here.
might want to move a little closer in case you've got questions.
Don't be shy, Valentin.
As you all recall, I'm not going to go into the whole
Right, no,
history of
please
this
don't.
because it's been beaten to death almost. But we're going to jump off from the point that we received back in I guess it's January, the Treasure Coast Regional Development Commission, Planning Commission's downtown master plan, which had various recommendations on how to move forward with an RFP or an RFQ to encourage redevelopment of the sites in question that are on K, L, and M. We have moved forward, as we all have been reminded a lot, that we have 2 historic buildings left besides 17 South M, where recreation is located at the present, and the garage that are slated to be preserved. So in putting together an RFP, which will be issued by the Community Redevelopment Agency that's overseen by its own appointed board. You had asked to be able to give input to them as to what might be included in that solicitation vehicle. So we've met at several different occasions. Joan Oliva, the president of the, I can't remember her title, I'm sorry, director of CRA, and Valentina and attorneys, and went over the various options of what solicitation vehicle might lead to the greatest probability of success. We arrived at a two-part RFP. The first part having qualifications of an entity that would want to participate, or entities to participate in the redevelopment of the sites, and then shortlisting those to 3 or possibly more to put full-fledged proposals together showing their financial numbers, their pro formas, their ideas expressed in plans and renderings to be considered, and then move from there to choosing someone to negotiate with. But in deference to the plan that was presented to you all in December, there were quite a number of recommendations that were brought up that I won't say are necessarily in conflict with our comprehensive plan, our strategic plan, or the land development regulations, but they do entail some policy direction from you as a commission that whether you be open to allowing a project to move forward, embracing those various suggestions. So I wanted to go through each of those. And if you have, we might go through them one at a time. And if you want to interrupt me, that's fine. And I'll try to answer the questions. And you know,
Before I stop, I was just saying, we're not picking a design tonight. We're just saying, how do we want to go forward with the RFP process?
Right.
Okay.
So keep it in mind, a later slide is going to go into what we think are the benefits of doing a two-part process. But whichever avenue we go, there are some policy directions that are needed from you. One is the sustainable bonus incentive program requirements. As you may or may not know, any building over 2 stories must participate in the program. And there are 2 tiers. Projects that meet the requirements of the land development code, or tier 1, that usually, and in this location, it would be floors 3 and 4, or in some cases, floors just 3. And there's a $7.50 contribution for those floors on those different locations. Tier 2 occurs
$7.50 per square foot.
per square foot.
Okay, just want, I'm trying to,
Of which you've all had made a resolution that you would like to see at least half of that come back to the city in the form of a cash payment to the Sustainable Bonus Incentive Trust Program. Tier 2, if you have a project of half an acre or more, which this project would be, you can get an additional floor, which in one location can get you to 5 floors, and the other one, not an additional floor necessarily, but additional height and additional density by 25%. Those square feet are cost $15, of which $7.50 must come back to the city. So in the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Commission Downtown Master Plan, which I always call the Downtown Master Plan, it was recommended that the project or proposals be exempt from that program. So you would not have to pay sustainable bonus monies to the city. You would not have to incorporate sustainable requirements unless they were part of your proposal moving forward. So that's question number 1.
and I'm just, and they wouldn't have to pay, but they also would not be eligible for the height increase, correct?
Well, we'll get to that, but yes,
That's
they would be eligible for the height increase per the plan.
Okay.
And we'll get into that in a minute.
All right.
We also have a transfer development right program that allows for density to be increased by 10%, which in most of these cases would allow it to go from 50 units an acre to 55. And that again is a payment of $15 per square foot, the whole cost coming to the city. Later, you'll see a little bullet called density. The plan recommended that there be no cap on density. So it would really be no point of, if you choose to go that policy direction, there would be no point utilizing TDRs, as they're called, for additional density because there's no cap on the density. Point 2, we'll go to 3. It's also recommended that the proposal not have to participate in our recently adopted affordable workforce housing program requirements, which would require that 15% of the project be in a workforce or affordable housing range, depending on the various unit types that are proposed. The plan also recommended that the project not have to meet our site and building design qualitative and performance standards when it comes to green building. Right now, that program requires that any project, new project or addition over 7,500 square feet has to meet certain performance standards in terms of recyclability, trash collection, water consumption, utility consumption. Per the plan, this project would not have to meet that. It would also not have to meet our programmatic requirements, which is basically for a plan development, an articulation of how that project fits into the 10 areas that are very important to Lake Worth Beach. Next point. Some of the areas to facilitate what is being recommended in the plan would require a major future land use amendment in the comprehensive plan. You may or may not know that our future land use element caps or provides the mechanisms on density. You are not allowed to provide waivers on density. So if you were to go down the road that the plan recommends of an uncapped density, we would need to change the comprehensive plan, which would be a major comprehensive plan change to facilitate that uncapping of density. And what was recommended is being the Old Town Historic District. But if you were to go that route, we're recommending the whole downtown because it just, the way the boundaries are drawn, it's very difficult to tell when you're in a historic district and when you're not. So we should kind of like treat them all the same. There are a couple other elements that would need to be changed in the comp plan to facilitate what is being proposed there. I mentioned density and having it not be capped. One of the things that was most interesting in the plan was that height was proposed to be measured, in only stories. And there was technically not really a cap on how tall a story could be. So with their recommendation, you could build a building to 65 feet on Lake and Lucerne, whereas now only through a plan development can you get to 56.25 feet. The other recommendation is that those buildings that meet that criteria would be permitted by right. By right means that staff is approving it and it would not go to any public discussion.
Yeah.
Which I have a major issue with because
I'm glad you do.
We did broaden a little bit 12 years ago what staff could approve, but this community deserves input on this project.
Right.
That was the next point, by right, on those 5 stories on Lake and Lucerne, and then 3 stories elsewhere in the historic district. And 3 stories also requires going before a board because staff cannot provide sustainable bonus incentives on its own. There was going to be no restriction on the minimum unit size. So whatever unit size the developer proposed would work would be acceptable. Maybe not to everybody, but could be included in the proposal. Right now, we have minimum sizes based on a studio as being 400 square feet up to a 3-bedroom unit, I think has to be 1,000 or 1,200. And then the unit sizes that we have in our micro units. So that would be out the window now.
It would go below that?
It might.
Below 400.
Well, it could, well, right now we have a studio can be as small as 250 under a micro unit, but the micro unit requires interior common area amenities as well as other things. The other piece would be having significant parking requirement reductions or exemptions to facilitate the project. Under our plan development proposals, and there are some incentives, but it doesn't allow a project to go forward without at least 1 parking space per unit. So these are the main points that were proposed in the plan. The other parts that were recommended really are already covered by our major thoroughfare design guidelines, our historic preservation design guides are already incorporated one way or another in our comprehensive plan and land development regulations. But these areas are the ones that were really pointed out as being, oh, this requires a policy direction of some sort from the city commission. If these, we'll call them exceptions or waivers or changes wanted to be included in the RFP. So we'll stop there because I know that's a lot.
It's a lot.
But by your faces, I think you're kind of surprised all that was in the plan.
No, it's in here.
Okay.
No.
All right.
Yeah, and so since there is so much, I think let's approach this in an orderly manner. How's that? Let's try that. Commissioner McBoyd Vice Mayor McBoyd had his light on first. I certainly have some questions as well. let's just go down one by one with the commission. Let's start with Commissioner Boyd and working down. And then I'll end up if there are questions that have not been asked. And I would ask us to, yeah, I mean, I think there's certain things. All right, so Commissioner Boyd, why don't you just go down, we're just limiting the
Yeah.
discuss right now. Let's look at what your comments or questions are about that.
First is the question on process. Do we have some mechanism? I see, it looks like it's happening right there. You're answering my question of how do we record all of our contributions to?
Well, the city clerk's office is an amazing record keeper.
And we have it on record.
And they do.
It's on film.
Good. I've had a lot of input. I had some of it that came in 2 weeks ago when this was originally on the agenda and then was taken off. And then I've had more input since then and more quite recently. Interestingly, I hear quite a bit of consistency in the input that I've gotten. And I will just sort of enumerate some of those and I share them. A lot of people have said, please don't do a single request for proposals and don't develop the lots as one aggregated thing. Develop them as individual or perhaps some subgroupings, but do them as more and more as individual lots. And the argument that I've heard that makes some sense to me is if you want to preserve the historic flavor character, which tends to have diversity of building types and things like that as a part of it, you're more likely to get that if you don't have one single developer, but you have the independent creativity of a bunch of different ones. So that came up a lot. People felt quite strongly about that. Of course, I heard a lot. This is a historic district. Please keep the low elevation of that. So mostly I heard 1 to 2 stories, perhaps in an extreme. If you set back somewhat or a step back, you could go to 3, but basically keep it in the 1 to 2 range. A preference for local developers, smaller developers. The suggestion was made, and I believe it's sort of been circulating around a little bit, get some involvement from an outside firm, and Victor Dover and Dover Cole was suggested as one. The suggestion was get them to do the first draft of the either individual RFPs or collection of RFPs, or however that is dealt with, but something that focuses on multiple lots. Get them to do a first draft and then the commission look at it, the CRA look at it, our staff look at it, do it in that order. Again, I mentioned the 2-story max.
I have a question. We say 2-story max, where? Like all over the whole project?
The sense I got was the strongest feelings were along Lake and Lucerne, keep it that. If you're a little bit back, you might go up a little higher as you get back into the residential, maybe you need to come back down again. I suspect there's varying thoughts in the community, but people seem to be quite strong, but they were not keen on height on Lake Avenue. And I thought about it when we were up in Tallahassee, and Tallahassee is kind of bimodal. The older part of it is all about 1 and 2 stories with a few 3-story, and then boom, there's really tall things.
Because they had to start making money on their project.
But another suggestion that I heard frequently was maximize the use of grant funding to give more flexibility, sort of the logic that William just presented to us on the buy down. To achieve the goals, try to look for some other sources of funding, so it's not all on the backs of the developer. And I think another one that I heard quite frequently was, let's not rush into this, that yes, we would like to see development happen, but let's try to get it. This will have a big effect on the flavor of our downtown, which I think there's widespread agreement that flavor has an importance, both economically and flavor wise. Let's not rush into it. Let's get it as right as we can. And those are, I think, distillation of what I heard from a number of people.
Well, is this you, we're kind of trying to focus on this list that they just went down. Is that what?
Well, I'm
Oh, yeah.
focused on,
Make sure you're speaking, this is your turn to speak. Let me make sure that you got what you wanted to say.
yeah,
Okay. Okay, Commissioner Stokes.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful for me to, I wish that, I don't know if anybody from Treasure Coast is here to speak to this, because these are very extreme recommendations. So I'm curious, two things. One, when they were running their performas and all the different, punching all those numbers, were they assuming that we were going to adopt these? Like, so I'm pretty sure,
I can answer part of that.
yeah, I'd really like to understand that.
If you look at all the proposals that were performers that were run, was a 5-story building on Lake. They were attempting to have in the neighborhood of 70 to right under around 90 units involved. There are multiple buildings. Nothing the performers that were run did not include, because they were run before we adopted our affordable housing program. So they assumed that was not there. Our site and building design qualitative standards had not been adopted, so they assumed those were not there. And the performer that I looked at, because I ran my own, so I have a performer that's much more simple than the developer uses. It gets very close to what the number is. They did not assume payments for the transfer development rights that would be required under our code, or the payments to the city under the Sustainable Bonus Incentive Program. So the assumptions were that the recommendations that came from the citizenry and Treasure Coast were in play. Now, the density, they were well below what could be allowed through TDRs and transfers and that sort of thing. The height, like I said, there was a 5-story building on Lake. Most of the rest of it was under 2 or 3 stories. There were individual buildings proposed, because we did work around the quadruplex that's being preserved and the little cottage, as well as 17 South M Street. So a lot of this, except for the density, the unit size, the height in stories, the 5-story building could have been allowed under our program. It may not be as tall as was shown in the plan. And they did not get into process on how it would be approved. Because that's, right now, what was proposed, all would have had to be a plan development coming to you eventually for 2 readings. If the recommendation on by right were to be followed through, none of it would come to the city commission. And it's a technicality as to whether it would have to go before the preservation board or not, because by right implies that it can be approved at staff level, but there is a level of oversight that the preservation board might have beyond that. So,
And by right means that they wouldn't have to pay into the sustainability bonus fund. So you said with the numbers that we got in this packet, it looks like they were not assuming that extra payment. Okay.
right, we're not assuming inclusion of affordable housing either,
Right, I knew that.
A sustainable bonus or
or TDRs.
I'm not in favor of having a by right 5-story. And I agree with Commissioner McFoy. I don't like 5 stories, period, on Lake Avenue. I have a question about just the way we measure height. Like, that just is like intriguing to me, of like, I wish that someone was here to speak to why we recommended measuring it by height instead of number of stories, and like to be able to like have a good opinion on if we want to change any of that, whether not by right, but just even the way that we go about how we measure
I
things in
think
the
the
city.
part that was missed is that we measure using both.
Okay,
We utilize height and stories. And the maximum height of a floor can be no more than 15 feet. What was conceived is that if you designed the most perfect building, it would be very difficult to get the 5-story building into 56.25 square feet. Vertical feet. And why that is that you'd have to have pre-stressed concrete. It would be an expensive mechanism. Otherwise, the ceiling heights in those buildings would be kind of low. So if you wanted to go the extra means of a more expensive building, you could cram that, lack of a better word, that additional story. And otherwise, if you do traditional building, which is not post-stressed concrete slabs and such, you might only be able to get a 4-story building in that 50 feet. Under form-based codes, they just seem to love measuring in stories. And they do tend to have a cap on how big a story can be, but it's quite a bit more gracious than what our 15 feet would be. And so what happened in West Palm, which I think they covered in this, West Palm ends up has 5-story buildings that have very large mezzanines in them that didn't count. So under the DPZ plan there, which was a form-based code that was adopted in 1994, and I was involved in it a little bit before I left there, they have 7- and 8-story buildings that are technically 5 stories because their mezzanines weren't counted under the code. And so that raised a whole stink, and then they changed the code. And I think West Palm's changed their code multiple times now, and they're well away from a form-based code.
So is our existing code, are we, I guess, protected against that additional height?
We are. And we also have a floor area ratio, which gives you a volumetric size of a building that can be placed on a plot of land based on how large that land is. You also factor in setbacks. There's a 5-foot setback on the sides, 15 from the back. It creates an invisible box. Well, the floor area ratio prevents you from completely filling up that box. How you arrange the massing elements within that box is up to you based on certain parameters. So we have our code is unique. It has been emulated by, I don't know how many different entities in Florida because it has little pieces that they like, but listening to Lake Worth Beach over 2.5 years of public workshops and trying to look at how can we ensure that development, to the best of our ability, is contextually compatible with already here, and constantly being pointed at, look at the Lucerne, which has no setbacks and went straight up. I'm like, okay, our code isn't going to allow that. It's going to require setbacks. It's going to require stepping back as you get taller. You're not going to be able to fill the whole volumetric size up. So we have a lot of protection mechanisms in our code. The way that the plan was written, you could get a substantially larger volumetric building on Lake and Lucerne if you went with all the recommendations than you could utilizing all of our incentives that are in our code now.
Are we at, I think when I met with Mr. Little, he had mentioned something about the way our code is set up now could potentially incentivize developers to maximize to the same height. And you could see, I think, please correct me if I'm wrong, from this conversation, I don't know, happened months ago, that like somebody might put up a building here, it's going to go to this height, and then next door, they're going to do it, and you're not going to have that kind of variation that we appreciate so much in our downtown because we don't have big blocks.
Well, there are two things that are protecting you from that. One is that the mechanism to get the maximum height requires a half an acre. There are very few half an acre anythings downtown. We also have setback requirements and contextual things that are required to be harmonious under our preservation ordinance. I want to remind everybody that what everybody has latched onto as being possible, we'll bring up the elephant in the room, the Rosemary merger project could not be built or approved under any means with our current code. And you couldn't even provide enough variances to allow it to happen. So, and that scared everybody, and rightfully so, but we never got a proposal that could actually really move forward. What we did do, and all of you were not here, we did run the maximization of what type of building might happen through a figure ground and a massing study that was done by our planner consulting firm. What does she call it now?
Yeah,
Took her name.
NZ.
NC, but she's now she's with Chenmore now. That showed, which I was surprised that there wasn't more out. There was outcry, but that was a big blocky building, and but it wasn't as loud and vociferous as I thought it would be. But what is proposed under the Rosemary merger and the company out of Miami was substantially larger than what was that contextual study. And so we knew they had kind of like gone well beyond what was allowed, because what we studied was the max. This is as big as it can possibly get, which under our code, really in the historic district, doesn't support the attainment of maximization. Because you're like, again, what Mr. McBoy mentioned is, being contextually harmonious and sympathetic and tearing things down and being set back, all that had not been considered or taken into account.
Okay. So I'm not open to just having by right 5-story buildings and like no limit on density or and all those other things. Is there going to be another time where we talk, because there was also a policy recommendations on civic open space and streetscape. Is that what you said is already covered
We
in
have
some of
that
our?
in our code already. If you'll remember that the building that was shown in Treasure Coast went straight up 5 floors. To do that, you have to provide a civic open space or a setback area on the street already. How big it is really predicated on the building itself. And so we already have that as a requirement. It isn't like written that way because we allow some design latitude and more flexibility in addressing those things in the combination of both the major thoroughfare guidelines and the historic preservation guidelines. That just made it a requirement. If you're going to do a 5-story building, you have to do a civic open space. Well, to do a 5-story building now, you've got to provide open space on the first floor, first 2 floors if you want it to go straight up. Otherwise, it goes up a little bit and then it sets back a significant amount after the 2nd floor. We also facilitate a way to do an arcade that provides shade on the 1st floor as an option, but it's still open space to the public. It isn't like just dedicated directly for the project itself. So there's some things in our guidelines that would provide a little more latitude and flexibility to a developer or a designer building on lake, and as well as in the other areas of the historic districts.
Okay, I guess with the, not that I want to bring this up again, but when we were looking at the Gulfstream Annex and that was all allowed with all of this stuff, it didn't really seem like there was open space. Like I know they had the little breezeway arcade, but like when you looked at the lot size and the amount of space that building covered and everything else, that was a special case because we're all excited to try to get that project to move forward, but we didn't grant any special
They
exceptions there.
maximize every available inch they could get. We'll just put it out there.
Right, so it's hard for me to picture like how our code protects us from having like a lot that just is completely maximized like that.
And some of the things that we could, put in the RFP or in the design preferences is that additional open space is required per what the code allows. Additional landscaping is an item. If you would like a usable civic open space, that can be required or put in as part of the RFP versus it, not moving in that direction. One of the things that I guess worked in a way against some of the things that you all wanted is that the setback on the existing building is 0 at Gulfstream. And so having a building, when you set it back to a requirement, it doesn't look it's really set back, but it actually is because of the current building. And part of the current building actually sits in the right of way. The arcade on the east side is actually in the city's right of way, but we'll ignore that for right now.
We like it.
And most of their open space ended up being on the back. There's like a 25-foot open space along First Avenue South because there was a desire to have it be able to tear down more gradually to that neighborhood versus having, because there was a discussion, the building was pulled quite a bit back from the
I
street
remember, yeah.
originally. And then people didn't like that. So they pushed it as far to lake as they possibly could.
Okay, I think that's it for now.
Richard, yeah.
Okay. Measuring height in both feet and stories, it's so critical. And the thing that I can think of is those of us that are 6 feet tall, if you've ever walked it through a Victorian or pre-Victorian building, you bump your head on a lot of floors. And then the other side of that is if you only did one and not the other, and you said, cap at 2 stories, and maybe those 2 stories could be 20-foot ceilings. So critical to have both. In terms of changing policy, I think what really needs to be captured and like moving us forward and putting out this RFP is putting out the making it clear that there is flexibility and there are limitations, because I think, especially with the building height, I did see maybe a little bit of confusion regarding how that's measured and how the code interprets that. So I think, we really want to be careful and being absolutely clear on what can and cannot happen and what is being proposed. And also that what is being put out there as this report, for example, is not written in stone. It's not, make this design, we're not putting the blinders on a developer. And I think we really should be kind of adamant about that thing. And in terms of the policy recommendations, like I think everyone up here and for your sake and everybody's sake, we would not go for anything that was by right, especially on a downtown street. I've gotten loads of comments on the concern. The concern, I agree with Vice Mayor McVoy is the concern seems to be on Lake specifically in terms of height. And I often think of, moving around a neighborhood, I'm like, well, even the ones that are set back, like what does that look like? And I often think of, I never remember what it's called, but the nursing home by your house, Mayor Resch, that's a 3-4 story building, I believe. And you walk right by it and and because of the setback and because of the landscaping, it's hardly noticeable that it's that tall. So, making sure that this RFP not only encourages that flexibility, but makes it clear that that's kind of the preference, right? And I think just from my, understanding of land use law, I look at this list of recommended changes and two of my favorite ones are up there, and that's no minimum residential size and going less on parking requirements. I'm always a big fan of that. And I think anything that might require a policy change, if we need to do a policy change to allow that kind of innovation and progress, then let's not let that get in our way. And, we all got the same comments, I'm sure. And I think one of the ones in that regard that kind of stood out to me and it kind of really got me thinking was a preference for maybe not aggregating the project and maybe having the availability of maybe multiple developers or a team of developers to tackle it piece by piece. And I think that would give us, it's an interesting concept. And if the developers are out there to do that and take it on that way, I think it would give us a really dynamic and flexible space and give us the opportunity to have more open green space. Because I don't think anybody in this town wants curb to curb development anymore, right? So we like our green spaces clearly. And yeah, so I think we're probably getting close to 30 minutes, so I'll end it there. But yeah, flexibility on policy changes if needed. Maybe not everything that's in the report, especially the by right stuff. But let's not let our policy to get in the way of something that might potentially be proposed.
Madam Clerk, how much time do I have? We're down to the 30 minutes.
I just want to be clear, I only made my
No, you have
changes.
16 minutes left, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Well,
So-
that's what we're trying to do. This is policy.
Right,
That's
but
fine.
my lack of comments on the RFP isn't, I'm good to go with everything. It's just, we were focused on the policy changes
Well,
right now.
that's what I'm.
Okay. I don't want to run out of time. You're like, oh, come do anything.
We're gonna run out
good
of
to
time. We're gonna go to workshop.
go.
I think, there was a comment that we all got. I think, let's not rush into this.
Yeah.
Rushing into this is probably many words, many phrases could be used for the L&M project, but I think rushing is not one of them. Okay, sustainable I'm just gonna go down the list. The sustainable bonus program requirements, they're suggesting we waive them. We don't use sustainable bonus points for the project.
The whole downtown.
From the plan would be.
And it would be for the entire district,
Right.
that whole, not just that project.
Not just the project, the whole downtown. And again, time is of the essence, but the pros and cons of that would be that they can get higher buildings and
Where I'm hearing, I'm listening, is that most of what I'm hearing from you that you would like to see can be done through exceptions and waivers already within our code. But keep in mind, we've actually provided waivers where you didn't have to pay the whole fee for TDRs. Or and I'm saying you as in the city and previous commissions, we have waived some of the requirements for sustainable bonus, such as the payment. So those are things that we could facilitate as a possible option in the RFP, saying, okay, because you might see the best
could we
design.
limit what sustainable bonus requirements and advantages would be in an RFP?
I could try.
Okay. And again, I don't want to, we'll have more conversations about
What we
this.
can do is, as part of the qualifications of looking at the firms, we could put, these are things that are required in our code. if you were selected to do a full-fledged proposal, what of these you must have a waiver on?
Okay.
Or must have an exception for, or which ones are you willing to abide by? And that might lead the discussion to, okay, and the Dover Coal thing, I think is already moving along, but it might help right through RFP. That might lead the discussion to, okay, well, these developers are lovely and nice, but they want too much.
Right, okay, so
And
let
these
me,
other ones are better.
okay. And that kind of goes the same thing with the transfer, the TDRs and the affordable work, waiving the requirement of affordable work. They're suggesting that we waive the affordable workforce housing. Okay, which is, to me, sort of counterintuitive because we're doing data. Part of our thing is that we want people living downtown, and some of those people are the servers in the restaurants and the people that really can't afford. Sorry, okay. Qualitative performance standards, that's green buildings, that sort of thing. I would have to know more. Density, it's downtown. I'm from New York, we live dense. I live on Second Avenue South. I can reach out and touch my neighbor's house. I mean, I'm not that concerned about density. Height measured in stories. I have a concern as well. None of us want a tall building right on Lake Avenue. I do, however, though, and you're absolutely right, Mr. I've lived around the corner from the Manor Nursing Home for 35 years, and you don't know it's there. And it's a 5-story building. I mean, I can see it from my front door, but you really don't know it's there. And it's not even set back that far. And there's really not great landscaping. You go by and you don't see it. But the step back, I think, is important because when you walk past a building, you don't want it looming over you. But I think we also have to take advantage of the fact that we need some density. So I would go with a step back, like 2-story, then a step back. By right, I would no. It's just a hard no. No minimum residential, we've sort of worked on that one and small, again, for our waiters and waitresses and teachers that don't have families, that's fine.
We have the micro units.
Well,
We
we
have,
right,
we
we're
have
doing
other
right.
things in place to
Provided some
increase
waivers on the
density.
Required residential size. The Bohemian has like a 16-foot waiver on the 1-bedroom units. That can be part of the request of plan development.
I believe that every unit should have a parking space. I mean, I'm sure it's aspirational that everyone bikes, but there are a lot of us that don't bike. And I think having one car is not an unreasonable request at this point in time. I feel very strongly about 501 Lake Avenue. I believe that is a beautiful building. That will be a perfect visitor center. And when I was just up in Tallahassee, there's this building. It's amazing. There's this little tiny building, which was for years and years a library, literally the library. And it's now a bar and restaurant. And looming above it, and it's perfect the way it's looming above it is a building, there's big. I want to keep that building. I think it would be a shame to lose that building. I think it's a useful building. It's in good shape. And it is part, it is a historic building that I think, some people are saying, Havana Hideout. I mean, that's an old building, but it's really just a concrete building that I'm not that concerned about. So the 501 Lake Avenue is something that I feel very strongly about. Now, I had a question, and I'm wondering if this would be a possibility, because I believe that we should at some point have a joint meeting with the CRA to make sure with the RFP that we're all on the same page. I don't want to misstep like we had a few years ago. So I'm wondering if we do the RFP, the request for qualifications and get, say, a couple of 2 or whatever qualified people, then to have perhaps a joint meeting with, however this can work. That I think the CRA and the City Commission should talk more. And I think that would be a good idea for us to sit down and go, okay, now we have a couple qualified people. Here's the RFP that we have prepared. Can we sit down and just, how do we want to fine tune this before it goes out and we agree on a developer, choose a developer, because
It makes for an awkward RFP process, but what I would suggest in further to that, to see whether we need it or not, is that when we get some RFP language together and some of the things that I'm writing lots of notes down of what we can include in the RFP, that the joint meeting would be recommended between the two of you to go over what actually is the final 2-part RFP.
fine. I mean, I
If
just think
that's
it's
possible.
important that we talk to each other.
And so you know what the CRA board is expecting
Right.
and what they're expecting from you.
Yeah.
And before it actually gets floated out on the street.
Yeah, no, I think that's, is that, you think?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, but I would like time. I have not had time to give any input into the 2-part RFP, the RFP
But that's
in
what you can do
general.
with staff, meet with them and talk to them. I mean, where else would you do it? We're not gonna have another, I mean,
Well, then nobody else gets to hear what I say. I'm looking at the property appraiser's website plus Zillow and Zestimates, like all of that property combined right now, if we just sold it, and property appraiser website is always lower than what you get. That property is $4.3 million according to that, and that's without the improved value of the houses that were just demolished. And we're talking about 2.1 million. I think it would be great for us. We could do an RFP for the back half of that property of where the leisure services there and all the properties behind that, and develop that with infill develop. And we could do a negotiation an invitation to negotiate for our lakes front, our Lake Avenue front property where we keep that land. I think right now that we're totally selling ourselves short with the amount of money we're asking for that property and
Well, it
just
has to
handing
be-
it over to the developer. That's
There is no, the RFP has not been finalized in terms of what money is needed back. What was put in there, and this is why some individuals were upset, is that there is a minimum threshold that I think the city needs to get back is what it's spent to cover the sales tax monies for purchasing the property. It's not a max. And I know that people are upset that, oh, you spent $4 million buying property. Why are you only going to try to get $2 million back? Well, we haven't got any proposals. We might find ourselves at the minimum that's even going to be entertained is some number. Developers highly likely will, support or offer more than that. But there's no definitive, like this is the sales dollar value has been decided on by anybody.
and that would be one of the things that we would use as qualifications for the
we're gonna
developer,
have-
that they would, how much they
They're
would.
gonna have to get part of the qualifications. What is a preliminary number of what you
Right.
think you can give the city and the CRA in return for having control of this property? And if it's some ridiculously low number or doesn't cover the city's costs, they have to recoup the sales tax money, they won't be qualified.
Mhm.
We'll move on to the
But-
next one.
But we would welcome more.
We'll welcome more.
Yeah.
And the RFP can be written to encourage multiple people to collaborate together or separate ones. Just keep in mind that if it's separate ones, it will be difficult to get to the densities if they don't decide to work together as
Yeah.
a group. So, multiple developers could be involved, and I think that's it's actually a very good idea. But those developers are going to have to collaborate because it would be very difficult to develop that site with the infrastructure that's needed and provide the housing units to actually warrant the sales price return that we need to get back in order to even be whole.
Yeah, and I think that I read that, I mean, we've all gotten the same emails and contacts. It's an interesting idea to have different developers, but I think that's sort of based on the model of when the city was being built up, one guy would buy a piece of property and do it, and then another guy would be that the next, so there was not much continuity to, hopefully it worked. So I'm really concerned with time. We have public comment, I'm sure. Do you have 30 seconds? You'd like to say something?
Just to reiterate, I think the importance of not thinking of it as one property, thinking of what are the possibilities of doing it as multiple properties. I agree with the mayor on 501. I would also put in a vote for 509. I'll comment on
In regards to what, by the way?
holding on to it, finding a way to work with it. And there've been some interesting ideas of what you do with the space between the two. Could be another, could be divided differently than it is now, the two lots. The other one that hasn't been talked about, but somebody put the bug in my idea, and I think it makes sense, is the requirement at the corner to do some public space if it gets to be a bigger building. I think you're not hearing much enthusiasm for 5 stories or 56 feet or whatever, but if it went that direction, the requirement of public space, that's right across the way from the cultural plaza. Maybe it doesn't make a lot of sense. Maybe that's not that great a benefit to have a public space right on there when you already have a big public space right across. Maybe there's some other benefit that would be better to ask for. Just a thought.
Commissioner Diaz, quickly.
Yeah, I just have basically a yes or no question, and maybe it's an opinion question from both of you, but if we rely more on exceptions and variances, do you think we're kind of like creating like maybe a lost opportunity on us? Like, do you think there's an opportunity to take a look at these parts of our code and really come up with something, using this as like the pilot or to igniter, if you will, to come up with something innovative to change that section of code.
We already have, like I said, one of the most innovative codes in the
Yeah.
state of Florida, if not anywhere. I was just called by somebody who consulted from California, wanting to know how our code got to be. So I think it was kind of anyway. The plan development allows for waivers and flexibility.
Yeah.
We haven't gotten any really far out there requests beyond like, okay, well, we're trying to save a tree, or we're trying to save, or there's an odd aspect to the lot. That many exceptions, and that's one reason that is that we have caps on things. Where other communities, and I'm trying to make it quick, they provide exceptions for height, exceptions for density, exceptions for all kinds of things like that. And so you don't get very much predictability, especially in West Palm. It's a crapshoot. And so we've got caps. If you can't build within this maximum, then you need to go somewhere else. And so I'm sure that through the housing study and through the ability plan, there will become some recommendations on things to include in projects such as multimodal aspects to a project. Maybe we might get to the point where we're requiring more affordable housing if we can figure out how to pay for it, or the types of housing that may more quickly address the housing issue than what we've got. But I don't think there's a missed opportunity, because we are asking people for ideas as part of the RFP process that can be considered. And if they really like them, then we can incorporate them in the code.
What are the next steps?
Well, so
You go to the next slide. Fine. So I wanted to go over the two-part process. The first one is the qualifications, and the second part is the full proposal from the groups that are shortlisted. And I think we're recommending at least 3 entities will be shortlisted, as long as we get a full participation. Why we chose a two-part process is that it would encourage more participation, because it will be a lower threshold of cost to participate. We also have the opportunity to put very definitive qualification criteria in at the beginning that will weed out developers who really don't belong to Lake Worth Beach to begin with. It gives us a greater understanding of what the developer or the investor, what our project goals, objectives, and priorities are. It also would allow for a greater variety of development opportunities, such as having more than one developer, group of developers working together. It gives us more opportunities for public input and collaboration on proposals, because West Palm's successful one from the south end of the city had a public, they hear some design ideas. What does the public think? And their thoughts were weighing in the selection process. I think it'll also give us a greater degree of certainty with what we're going to get back in the proposals, that they will be supported by the public versus not, which is open-ended. And you've given me a lot of things to work with Joan on, and what we can recommend to include that will narrow down what type of project. We're still going to have some outliers that are going to read part of it and submit something and think they're going to get somewhere, and they're going to be like, no, we're not. You can't stop that.
So the next step in going along with the idea of having a meeting with the CRA.
Well, I was going to write up this and work with Melissa and make sure I caught everything and send that to Joan. These are all the thoughts that the commission had, what they would like to see included in the RFP. Commissioner Wood mentioned Dover Coal. Jones I believe already has them under contract to help, and they're a very reputable design firm that has support across a broad range of people to ensure that if we have to put additional design expectations in the RFP as what we want, they can very well help us with that and help fine tune
in writing the RFP.
In writing the RFP, they may even they may be able to sit on the first part of the process or the second part in choosing those who are qualified, and then respond back to the proposals that are submitted.
Okay.
So I'll get this to Ms. Oliva, and then I can mention to her that we would like to have a meeting with the CRA board to go over the final iteration.
They meet the second Tuesday of the month. I'm wondering, instead of having a specially other new meeting, maybe, and I don't know what day that is, because my iPhone has eliminated my calendar. That would
I
be,
don't think it can happen by April. So we're looking at second Tuesday of May, whatever day that is.
okay, that would be the 9th.
Another thought that comes in that Victor, that Dover and Cole might be involved in, that's pretty important, that we haven't really talked about at all, is, okay, you put together either one RFP or multiple RFPs or RFQs or whatever, what are the evaluation criteria? Because I think we would probably want, and maybe the CRA too, want to see, well, okay, cool, you're asking for this, but how are you going to evaluate whether you've gotten there? Which,
Valentina is an expert in that area, and I've written a lot of RFPs too. Dover and Cole, that's why they've been discussed with helping us write the RFP. The qualification selection criteria are in the RFP.
Right.
So
Right,
if
yeah,
we have this
but it's
joint
an-
meeting, we will be discussing that.
Right.
So this is being turned over. We have had barely 30 minutes of conversation on this, and now it's going to get turned over to the CRA. We might be at a joint meeting, but it's in the hands of the CRA now.
No.
They're the ones
say that.
crafting, they're the ones working with Victor
Okay.
Dover, doing RFP. Are they going to be the people evaluating the RFP? I'm guessing.
Well, remember, the land is all under the CRA's control. The evaluation committee would be a combination of city staff, CRA staff, and possibly an outside independent person, because at the end of the day, the CRA board will have to approve a contract, and you all will have to approve a development project. So it's a little bit of an ethical gray area where those who are evaluating the project before they ever become a project are also going to be the arbitrator and the decision maker when it comes out the other end. There are going to be opportunities every day. You guys can send me information that you would like to see in the RFP. It's not just, this is your last
But
opportunity.
if I send it to you, I'm 1 out of 5 people. That doesn't mean everybody else agrees, or if McBoy sends something to you that I don't agree with, it's a very, I'm not comfortable with this process.
If you send it to both me and Carmen, we will have a way to get back to you and say, well, because we can send an email to all of you. In the sense that I don't think it's going to break the sunshine law. Here is a suggestion for the RFP, because it would be the same thing if we got one from the public. Because we're open to giving it from the public as well. Okay, well, here's an idea. Give your feedback to Carmen or to myself, and then it can be weighed in as being options. I pretty much think that the RFP draft that will come out will have some menu options in it that you and the CRA board or one or the other will have to decide, I want to go in this direction and not this one, or all 3.
and I
I mean,
think.
at some point, we have to make a decision. At some point, this is gonna get going.
But we've totally taken off the table, if I'm seeing RFQ, RFP correctly, we're taking off the table any kind of idea of land trust or public-private partnership. We were just in Tallahassee, there are cities across the state now that are actually doing these buyback movements where they're trying to get more land that the government owns, that they keep for the, long-term health of the city. I mean, in these pro formas, it's based on a developer coming in, making a certain amount of money in 6 years and being able to sell the project off. We have an opportunity here with this land in our downtown to do something special and to actually have a long-term benefit to the city and not just get turned over. And I feel like we haven't really discussed that or explored that.
That's not off the table. It can be something that's discussed, but there are contractual ramifications of that. And I'll give you one example of that is that the CRA is not in a position, and I get yelled at almost on a weekly basis, like, why are you not maintaining the properties? I say, well, I don't own them and I don't, and the CRA has limited funds. There's going to be a point where the CRA will no longer be able to carry the properties and maintain them. So they may get turned over to the city by default. If that happens, the only way for you to develop a project in downtown is to go to referenda, to have it sold, or if it's able to be leased for more than 20 years. So it adds a whole nother level of uncertainty to anybody who might develop it. But it does provide a land banking option. There is a limit, and Assistant Manager Ruiz can speak to more than this than I can, but this county is watching how we spent our sales tax money for parking, and we don't have any parking.
Right.
At some point, that investment has to be realized as a infrastructure improvement for the city. It's parking, it's a city building, it's a something.
Or we have to get the money back,
Or pay the money back.
which I
somehow.
think we could do with the back half of the properties.
I mean, I know this is heresy in some corners, but I think that the land between J and K, which is now, we have the parking lot there. I would like to see that expanded. And then we talked earlier today about the zoning thing, but I have no objection to some sort of parking structure that would maybe have some on the ground floor, maybe some retail or some community space, have a public-private partnership, go up a couple blocks, maybe have a green space on top. But I don't think we should just poo-poo the idea of a parking structure, because I know you might disagree, but there's a parking problem downtown. I'm down there quite a bit at night, and
And in
It's
deference to
jagged.
what Ms. Stokes mentioned, a public-private partnership could be a response in the RFP.
Mhm.
I
We had a developer on the first round that really was going to be requiring on a public-private partnership because they did not want to pay the city any money until their project had stabilized, which was anticipated to be 6 or 7 years. And so we were going to be carrying the sales value of the project for a while until they were profitable. They also were staging their improvements over a period of time. They weren't building it all at once. So by default, the city and the CRA were going to have to be active participants as a PP3 in that project. And we have a lot of unknowns that have happened since we've been talking. Interest rates are going up. The economy is a little weird. Banks are failing. All kinds of other things that we might not like any of the proposals that we get. So we have to have in the back of our mind some concept like what Ms. Stokes just mentioned as what will be our land banking options if we don't get anything that we like submitted. Because I don't think we are just beholden to accept whatever comes in. So I guess the least worst of the worst. I don't think anybody's going to be happy about that. We spent too much time and effort on that. End up with something that the vast majority of people are not happy with, but we just took it because it's all we had to take.
Well, but remember that before the last major round of elections, the CRA did feel that they had to take what they had, even though you're telling us that what was proposed, none of them would have in fact been buildable here.
It's two different
So-
things. And this is where we've got into the discussion about the RFP. The way the RFP was weighted, if you gave a complete response or responded to it, and you could show the numbers that you could pull off a project, you were selected to move forward in the process, which Rosemary Merger was. That did not, let's say the commission was still the way it was. That project would never have gotten through. It couldn't. And so Rosemary Merger may have eventually said, well, I can't get what I put in my proposal. Go to the next person. Because what we proposed, and we've made them very clear at the very beginning, you follow the guidelines, the preservation guidelines, major thoroughfare guidelines, we have zoning, whatever, all that sort of stuff. And I had 2-3 meetings with them. I'm like, you're going to have to modify your project and you're going to have to redo your pro forma and don't know what that is going to look like. And I guess at the end of the day, whether it was because of public input or the vociferousness of people against the project, they didn't like, we're not going to go forward with trying to figure out what we can move forward that is acceptable to this. Fine, goodbye.
And I think, again, what I've said before, that bringing back to us, what are the evaluation criteria as we put out whatever sort of, whether that comes from Dover and Cole, that we have a chance to review. I think I share some of the concern with Commissioner Stokes of process. I don't think we're in a hurry. I know, Mayor, that you think we are in more of a hurry. I think
I'm not in a hurry. I think that we've been talking about this thing for the past 3 years.
But we haven't done any substantive process things as a commission. I think staff has worked on it a lot, but we haven't. And I think we need to be very conscious of what we do. This is a big chunk of our downtown, and what we do in our downtown has a very big influence
Do you
on
think,
our
do you
economic.
think I disagree with that?
What's that?
Do you think I disagree with that statement, that it's an important project downtown? I don't disagree with
don't-
that statement.
Okay, good. Then we're in agreement. That's a good thing. Let's make sure that our process works well in getting something that a large chunk of our community will like in 2 years, in 5 years.
It's challenging. I mean, when we talked about the legal, we're the how much input do we have, but then the project has to come before us. But as we've talked about before, almost every other city in this state, their city commission is the CRA. I'm not saying that's what we should do, but usually the people who are elected and have to go out and knock on doors and talk to people and respond to them are the ones that have a lot of say in these major decisions. So I just think we're nervous, I think, especially like you said in the past, the division between the city and the CRA. We're not like every other city, so we don't have examples to look at. Where in Florida is there a separate CRA and city that works well together and gets the results we want? We don't have one to look at. So I want to be very careful that we don't a lot of the stuff it's not going to come back for another month and a half, you know, so it tends to like go out and then, oh, next week is a utility meeting. We're all not focused on this. And then a month and a half goes by and it's like, wait a minute, have we all had the opportunity to give the proper input that the people who voted us in office expect us to give? So I think that's what we're
I'm
being
gonna suggest
sensitive
that,
about.
I'm also gonna suggest that each one of you, to Carmen, work with Carmen and William to have individual meeting. If these are your concern, but give the input.
Well,
There's
also,
other forums to do that.
and we've always, and I had to describe to somebody that we're dealing with trying to make the best out of a bad situation and a bad bushel of apples. We will work and do, I commit that, and I talked to a little bit really quickly with Carmen about this today. I'll commit to doing the best I can with getting the criteria where they need to be, but it doesn't guarantee we're going to get anybody to respond that we like. And we have to be prepared for that eventuality if it were to come to be.
Yes.
Valentine and I worked together on several RFPs where we had it all set out and we didn't get a single responder for whatever reason.
Let's cross that bridge when we come to it.
But
if we
I just want to
come
lay
it.
you know, that we're not, there's no perfect answer to anything.
No.
And we're going to do our very best to get you the best respondents, the most qualified people. But at the end of the day, you may not like any of them.
Mhm.
And the CRA may not like any of them. And then we will circle the wagons again and create some other thing, maybe wheels that are oblong or oval or something.
I see Ms. Davis's light is on. Would you like to add something to this?
Yes, I've been very quiet listening, and certainly, as much as I've heard today about what we want to see, what we want to have as a result, I think the main issue or the important thing is creating an opportunity to create flexibility and creativity. And as I hear each one of you mention what you like to see, what you would allow or not allow, I think by what I heard from William, we can put whatever you want in it and say, this is what we want. We may not get a response,
Right.
but the key is to know our basic expectation of a product, the very absolute criteria that you want. And as we talked about, certain height and density and parking spaces, what we allow. You have those main areas that you absolutely need or want in a project, but then there's another level of flexibility as I hear about, well, are we considering I intend to negotiate the ITNs and 3P. All those are flexible options that we want to leave and allow in RFP so that once we get it, the key is now what the evaluation process is. And I agree with that we want to leave some creativity, but yet when we get to the evaluation process, that's where the rubber meets the road in determining, is this what we want? Is this the outcome that we accept in a product? So I say all that to say flexibility and options in the developer to bring some creativity to the table. And then the evaluation process will be the important determinant item in determining the outcome in the product. It doesn't make.
Yeah, that does make sense.
Yeah.
A reminder, though, for us is that my understanding of RFP processes is that we are not the evaluation committee. And that's where us being able to review, well, what are the evaluation criteria up front before it goes out on the street is very critical, because that's our only way of having some influence.
We're agreeing to that.
Right.
And so technically, so theoretically, the May, we'll talk to Ms. Olivia, but invade the CRA. We can invade the CRA in the May meeting to talk about. By that time, you'll have something to. So I think
I wasn't able to like give her a ring or anything,
Okay.
but
Well,
I feel fairly certain that we can have something fairly far along. And if it means anything, May is preservation month. So what better time to have a discussion about that?
Okay. Madam Clerk, do you have any public comment?
I do, Madam Mayor.
Okay, I have one here. Mr. Sims would like to speak.
Hi, David Sims, 715 North L Street. we've had numerous big projects recently. We've had the Bohemian, that's very big. It's very different, and it's strays away from what type of buildings are in this town. We've also have the Mid, Deco Green. We have many large projects and many other projects. There's no pressing need for this right now. There's no urgency for us to have another big building downtown. We're talking about a historic district downtown, which is not just individual historic structures, but the district itself is historic. And whatever's done there should be appropriate for a historic district. A big 5-story building or a 4-story building is not appropriate at all. I'm against anything more than 2 stories. I would like the properties, the structures to be kept separate individual zones. Small developers could develop small houses or small townhouses in each of those properties. There are, and we didn't know this at the time when there was this decision made to demolish the buildings, but there are numerous options for grants from nonprofits available, from the historic departments of the state government. The Inflation Reduction Act has grants for energy efficiency grants, which we could use. We could turn to like maybe a possible source from Habitat for Humanity.
Thank you. That's time, sir.
So there's other options we can look at.
Thank you, Mr. Sims. Yep. Mr. Townsend.
Hi, Todd Townsend, 502 South J Street. Looks like we're now, after many years now, continuing with the same argument. Build up Tall and Canyon are downtown, which is going to cause us to have to build a parking tower, which a lot of people have said that they really didn't want. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Clerk, why don't you begin? Oh, wait. So we have a late arrival. Hi. Sue DeJoy, hi. Come on.
Hi, Sue DeYoung, 2381 Sunset Avenue, apartment 110. Yeah, I really like what y'all are saying, especially about keeping the property in the town. We have some valuable property there. And since that was originally bought by the CRA, I don't know how many years ago, it's probably tripled in value. So let's look at that. And like Commissioner Stokes and Commissioner Goodboy were suggesting, we could really do some very interesting sustainable projects there. And speaking about sustainable, I think anybody that, puts in a bid to do anything there should, our criteria should be that they do solar, that they maybe have water cisterns to collect the water. I know it sounds like a really wild idea, but actually it makes a lot of sense if it ever rains again, that is. So, yeah, and other sustainable, I've got a couple of things here I wrote down. Yeah, keep it green. I know there's not a lot of trees there now, but we could and should plant native trees, and definitely keep it compatible with the Lakeport architecture. Breaking up into smaller developments is a great idea, I think. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Madam Clerk.
Madam Mayor.
Would you like to read the public comments that have been?
Yes, I know, I'm ready.
Okay, thank you.
First comment is from Catherine Kohlmeyer, 503 First Avenue South. Please do not include any possibility of sustainability credits or transfer development rights in this RFP, a strategy recommended by Treasure Coast. Sustainability credits are not appropriate for development in a sensitive historic district. Please make the criteria for the RFP very clear. The Treasure Coast recommendation and the city plan on the CRA website both talk about retaining the historic character of Lake Worth Beach. It is hard for me to match these stated values with what actually happens. To avoid another mistake, the commission could make the criteria very clear and detailed, not include avenues to waive such criteria, and then give the task of preparing the RFP or Ps directly to a qualified entity such as Dover Coal. The next comment is from William Monroe, 1430 North Lakeside Drive. There should be individual RFPs for each of the 6 remaining historic buildings on the L&M Lake to South First Avenue block. We do not need another mess like the Element people who wanted to build a totally inappropriate glass monolith that had only 2,500 square feet of commercial space. Cliff Kohlmeyer, 503 First Avenue South. Thank you for engaging Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council to get citizens' input. As its final report states, quote, at the core of the public sentiment towards the redevelopment of the properties is the desire for a smaller incremental infill development consistent with the historic scale and character of the area, end quote. I agree with this and with Dana Little's statement in this January 24th presentation that sustainability bonuses and TDRs are not appropriate for this sensitive project. The next step will be drafting an RFP, and based on past experience, I believe this should be written by an experienced design firm such as Dover Coal or Treasure Coast. These are valuable parcels that cost the taxpayers roughly $4.6 million to acquire and are worth even more today. It would be a mistake to sell us out by stating in the RFP that variances and bonuses are available before negotiations have even begun. Additionally, the contributing historic structures that remain must be saved. Small to medium-sized local contractors should be encouraged. And except for Lake Avenue, building height greater than 2 stories is inconsistent with the surrounding neighborhoods. Disaggregate no monolithic structures. Treasure Coast's recommendations are consistent with public opinion. Now we must hand the project over to an equally qualified design firm to write the RFP. Next is Richard Stowe, 414 North Federal Highway. The recently demolished Old Town historic structures were defined by their lot sizes. The city doesn't need another L&M RFP. The best way to preserve the authenticity of the Old Town local historic district is to issue an RFP on each of the properties. It's best to have a diversity of architectural styles on the vacant parcels. Secondary dwellings should be incorporated into lots with existing buildings. Some call that incremental development. The new building should be 2 stories in order to minimize parking demand and maximize opportunities for native landscaping. Be sure to lovingly restore all the historic buildings. Refrain from using common commercial materials such as laminate or plastic flooring. Apply for energy efficiency improvement and historic preservation grants. The filing period is from April 1st to June 1st. Tap Ramon Trias to quickly apply for those state historic grants. If the carport and garage are removed at 501 Lake Avenue, the Art Deco building has a potential space for a beautiful patio. 501 could house an upscale retail store, restaurant, or local organic grocery store with a deli. The concrete masonry structure that housed Havana Hideout at 509 Lake is in good structural condition. Save it, improve its functionality and visual appeal. It could be the city's visitor center or host outdoor dining with live jazz behind the small building. I implore you to take a vote to cancel the existing demolition order. Create a new 50-foot lot between the structures at 501 and 509. 5 years ago, Apple began renovation of the Tower Theater, which sits on a 50 by 150-foot lot. Today, it's Apple's flagship LA store. You can design and build great places in small spaces. Diane Brown, 905 North Lakeside Drive. We would like to see multiple RFPs, so have multiple buildings with diverse styles to fit in with older town better. It should have lower capital requirements. Multiple RFPs will help keep the charm of Old Town area. Also would encourage you to save the 2 Lake Avenue properties. Grants may be possible to preserve historic buildings and do energy improvements. The next comment is from Jill Carlin, 2381 Sunset Avenue, apartment 205. The character of our city, our brand, 20th century South Florida beach vernacular architecture is our most precious resource, which you can preserve with the choices you make. Many of us who were born in the middle/end of last century, as well as young people, long for the simplicity of those times expressed throughout our city in its vernacular architecture. People who come to Lake Worth Beach are often smitten with this kind of nostalgia. Amassing lots on South L&M Street project for block-like architecture expressed in the plans put forth is contrary to what we all love. Instead, perhaps parceling the lots individually to keep the integrity of the Old Town historic neighborhood. Could we break up the mass into the original individual lots and open bids to many? Can we task staff with implementing guidelines that emphasize our character and sustainability based on the newest findings for coastal communities? We can give families, businesses, and developers the chance to participate, live, work in our city. Please respect the concerns of those who helped to get you elected and do the right thing for our adorable city, which will enhance our pocketbook for future generations. I now have some comments that were submitted at the previous meeting when this item was originally on the agenda. Any comments that refer to the sample RFP, which is not in tonight's backup, have been curtailed. So first is Amy Ferreter, 30 South J Street. In December 2021, the commission approved a 6-figure contract with TCRPC to undertake a comprehensive study of the downtown, specifically the L&M properties, and to garner public input as to the appropriate future for the area. The TCRPC held an inclusive multi-day charrette in April 2022 and had conversations with downtown stakeholders, interviews with the mayor and commissioners, and made presentations to relevant advisory boards. An initial draft master plan was developed. It included various development scenarios, including financial feasibility analyses. These were based on the exhaustive input and suggestions from the public. On January 24th, 2023, a final draft downtown master plan was presented to the city and the general public. The plan includes the development program and financial pro forma of the various scenarios. At the same meeting, the commission accepted the proposal from and requested that staff recommend a best solution for solicitation of L&M's development. As a neighboring homeowner, I urge you to move forward with this project. The derelict properties have been extremely unsafe and an attractant to criminal behavior. Please listen to the experts we hired and move forward with making this area safe and productive. Jim Finnegan, 224 North Ocean Breeze. I am vehemently against the L&M master plan. This is not will give our town the look, feel, and sustainability for a small town. I am also against the demo of 501 Lake. All successful makeovers for downtowns are about keeping the historic building. That's what keeps our history, tradition, and tourists. I support Betty Rush's vision to save this 1930s building. It is well worth it to our community. Here are a few other points. The city needs to retain ownership of any parcels in our town, not sell or give away. Find grants to do this, rehab at 501. No privatization of alleyways. These need to be open and support our historic grid. Next is Gail Silverblatt, 414 North Ocean Breeze. I would like to see this project reflect the scale of the historic neighborhoods that bring visitors and keep residents here. And the final comment is from Donna Kerner, 1012 North J Street. Best planning practices, especially in historic districts, recommend against aggregation of parcels, noting that having different developers produces a greater variety of approaches and appearances, which is more compatible with the existing historic structures and more likely to enhance the distinctive character and visual integrity of our downtown. That is my last comment. And Madam Mayor, you have 3 minutes and 16 seconds left to discuss the item.
Well, I think we've discussed this one pretty extensively, so I'm gonna, unless somebody has 30 seconds that they'd like to say something cogent, I think we're done. I think we know the next step. You'll be talking, the next step, just to clarify, will be, you'll be talking to Mr. Leva, working on the RFP, designing, all the things that we've been talking about. I want to thank you all for your time. Thank you very much. Well, on this particular, get out of here. Okay. Now,
I'm sorry, Madam Mayor, we need a motion and a vote on this item.
no, we're just
No,
a
it's
discussion.
discussion.
This is just a discussion.
I'm sorry, Madam Mayor, in the backup on the staff report, it requires a motion.
Well, you're not getting one.
There's a motion to approve support for the issuance of an RFP for L&M property development as a two-phase solicitation, with
Okay,
phase one being qualification process and phase two final selection.
I think generally we all agree with that. Do I have a motion to go forward? I don't know why I don't know why that's there.
Do we have to have, it's a
I
discussion
honestly,
item.
I don't know why that's there because.
I'm uncomfortable voting on anything,
Yeah,
having it taken out
clearly,
of context.
Well, I mean, we're gonna have an RFP, but
But coming back, it's coming back to us. We're gonna be part of.
well, I don't think this is, I think this is just to
I'll-
get staff
I'll
to
make it
keep going.
Clarify. The motion was that you support the issuance, not a draft, not a schedule, not what's in it, whatever, of a request for proposal that'll have two parts, qualifications and then the final selection. So it's just your, whether you support moving forward
With
next steps of a two-step process.
not anything in particular, nothing, no details, no designs, no nothing. Just, are we gonna move forward on this project?
But if the CRA is contracting with Dover and Associates, I just don't know how strict that's going to be interpreted.
What has what?
Like that, how if they're going to say, yep, this is the two-step process, there's no room
No,
for
I don't think,
looking at all the other things that we discussed tonight.
Well, so you can add on to, I mean, this is a sample, Alan's gonna yap until he comes back. Sorry. Best 3 minutes. This was just a sample, motion. What your motion could be, you support a two-step process that will be achieved through a joint meeting with CRA, hopefully in May, and one incorporating as many of the design criteria that have been discussed tonight as possible.
do I have that motion?
And I would support that motion and including that the evaluation criteria be brought back to us for approval before that goes any further.
Well, that'd be part of the RFP.
That's part of the.
Right, that's part of the RFP. Yeah, I mean, it's always part of the RFP, right? So,
I don't have a problem with adding that little piece.
okay,
Well, I also wanted to make sure that the RFP is open to the possibilities of any kind of public partnership or land trust, all those other options that are out there.
Those notes.
right, but those are details. This is just really, are we going forward?
Traditionally, the RFPs are like, you're handing it over to a private developer, and I don't want my,
I don't think
Well,
we're doing that. I think we're just saying, are we gonna go forward with?
You're gonna end up with a somewhat of a hybrid in any way,
Yeah.
but what we can include is that the city is open to an ITN possibility coming out of the RFP process, a public-private partnership, moving forward with only part of the project now and part of it later. I mean,
But if staff doesn't have direction to go forward, then we sit here and nothing
you
happens.
have a myriad of options that could be incorporated in the.
I guess-
so what is it
So-
accomplishing?
So
To giving staff direction that we're gonna actually do something with the L&M project, completely no details, just are we gonna go forward or are we just gonna sit and let it rot? Essentially, I mean, We're going to do nothing or we're going to move forward.
If that was a fully accurate characterization, I'd say that's reasonable, but I don't think it is. The question, I think, in a number of our minds is by committing to a two-part RFP, one of the things that I hear very clearly is that all of the comments that we heard that said, don't aggregate, do individual lots or do at least a larger number of them. It's not clear to me that doing one RFP does not eliminate that possibility.
Does it eliminate that possibility? No, it doesn't.
Well, how would, if you do one RFP for the whole land area, how would you entertain and how would you encourage doing multiple different ones? Because that seems to have come across very consistently in the comments.
Well, I mean, yes, we have some public comments about that. We have some support for that here, but that could be, I think, we have people that will write the RFP that will say, as an alternative, developers could, right? I mean, that, right? That could be.
There are options of how you respond to the RFP. We're open to receiving multiple proposals on individual lots. We're open to like someone responding to like, I want 3 of the properties and the other 4 can go by the wayside. Or we could have a team of developers say, if this is, a very good example. There could be a master developer that has like 5 or 6 other people working underneath them, and they're each allotting, I want lot A, I want lot B, I want lot C, I want lot D.
As long as the term single RFP keeps all of those open, I think our level of, I think speaking for myself, my level of comfort goes up.
Well, I think that's what he just said. Right?
That option is available. Yes.
Okay,
Commissioner.
I understand. I saw the light. Thank you. Commissioner Diaz.
I guess the question for city attorney, since seems to be a lack of comfort in this, does there really need to be a motion for this to go on? I mean, we gave direction, we gave a lot of notes. The process is going to happen. So, is a motion really totally necessary? Because we have consensus, I feel like, or direction.
I think from a staff standpoint, it'd be nice to have an actual motion.
Yeah.
Because consensus is kind of a fluid, amorphous concept sometimes.
And one of the things that I hear, feedback I hear is that staff sometimes seeks direction from us.
I mean, what I'm hearing is you want an RFP,
Yeah.
you want multiple options in the RFP.
Right.
You're not saying just give me one thing. I think William said it very well. You can pick column A, column B, a combination of A and B.
And they're gonna make it as,
Do you have
they've
a
listened.
suggested motion for us? Because
I think he said it.
the one that's here is the motion to approve support for the issuance of a RFP, which could be interpreted like, go issue this, which we've talked exhaustively about isn't gonna happen. I just want to make
Well,
sure the motion that we make and the vote we make is clear about where we've been communicating tonight.
I guess one question, do you want to see the RFP before it goes out?
Yes.
Of course, I mean,
Okay.
about that. We're gonna have
So,
joint meetings.
right, right. So, I mean, that was a rhetorical question. So you're going to see it before it goes out. So if you don't like it, just like the housing RFP,
Right.
maybe you worked through that, you came up with different criteria that you wanted in the housing study that resulted in FAU.
So should that be
I
part
kind of
of the
envision
motion?
a similar process. For me,
So should that be part of the motion? But it's a little tricky because it also goes to the CRA. It doesn't just stay in-house with us. So we just want to make sure that we're clear in our motion that we do want to move forward, but we still expect to be involved.
right, so it's like the motion is staff develop an RFP and bring it back to us for final approval.
Yeah.
That William. would-
And
would
the
think?
other element of this is that you support a 2
Right.
part
That's important.
RFP,
Right.
because that's the main
Start with
element.
qualifications.
Mhm.
No, so.
No, I hear you, Glenn. I would like it to only go so far as to support the issuance of drafting of a 2-part RFP with the requirement that there be a joint meeting to discuss that draft, hopefully the meeting in May.
Or
Going
as soon thereafter as
or
possible.
soon thereafter, as soon as possible, because that's as far as I would like to see you go. I mean, I know it's not a full decision.
But we're not nailing it
Right.
down. We're not.
Yeah.
So,
Motion to approve supporting drafting a 2-part RFP to discuss at a joint meeting in May.
do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, it passes unanimously. All right, moving right along.
Is there any chance, I know we should have dealt with this before, but I'm looking at for Ms. Seaver back there waiting her way through.
I know, but we also have, I understand, we also have staff here. The next few things are,
I suspect that I will go quickly. Could we move that up? Is that, I don't
I
know.
was saying the same thing about
I have
moving to the top of new business. I think we should finish out unfinished business.
Oh.
yeah, we have one more. We have,
Sorry, I jumped the gun. I forgot the B
okay,
under unfinished.
B. B.
Motion to
Uh,
approve.
Do I have a second?
We've talked about this 3 times.
Yeah.
Right? Do you want to come up here, Mr. Brown? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
It says you'll speak, but you don't have to.
We'd love to hear.
Let's beat this one. Let's beat this horse.
Good evening, Jamie Brown, Public Works Director. We've talked about this many times. The original item that I had brought forward in the last meeting, the motion was to basically have this as part of an upcoming budget amendment where the actual fee would go into place. In talking with finance and other people, it comes, we don't need to do that. So we just need to basically get your guys' approval on this particular motion. Because I'm not sure when that next budget amendment's even going to come. So
I think I have a motion for Commissioner Stokes.
Yep.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
thank you.
All right, now, Julie Seaver has been waiting patiently. Now we're on new business, so it's appropriate if we want to reschedule, reorganize that.
I
Is there-
would move I up to the front. if that's-
I,
Second.
yeah, all in favor, yes,
Aye.
Let's just.
All right, here we are.
Okay, so let me give you a little introduction. We were just up in Tallahassee. And there is a bill going through the legislature right now. It's very short. And I want to read it because I think we all need to know the context. What this bill says is that the state flag, display of flags, governmental agencies, local governments, or other units of local government. We're talking about home rule here. A governmental agency, local government, or other unit of local government may, for exhibition or display, only expose the following flags to public view. The state flag that meets the protocol on flag display adopted by the governor pursuant to statutes 256.015. The United States flag that meets the requirements of statute 256.11. The POW-MIA flag that meets the requirements. The official state firefighter memorial flag. The state flag at public schools that meets the requirements of 256.032. The flag of the United States and the state flag on the grounds of each public post-secondary educational institution and every district school board building or grounds, and the flag of the United States in each classroom of a public K through 20 educational institution. No other flag may be exposed to public view for exhibition or display in any manner by a governmental agency, local government, or unit of local government. We have I think Wilton Manors passed a resolution, and then we're proposing a resolution. I'd like to go, and I read the resolution that we have in front of us, and I would like to go a little bit further with it. Now, we know that, obviously the focus, the target here is the LGBTQ community. But at sometimes we've flown the Haitian flag, and sometimes we've flown this flag, to that flag. We want to celebrate different things. This is, as I believe we see it, another an attempt on the part of the legislature to limit our local decision-making ideas. If we have, Lit City, if we want to celebrate our library, if we want to celebrate different things, we're not allowed to do that if this passes. I don't know where it is in the process, but what it really does is say, children, we have the American flag, we've got this, so don't do anything else. And number one, without going into the reasons behind it, it's a restriction on our own home rule. So I'm going to read the resolution, but I also think I would like to add to it, because I'm going to read it and then I'm going to tell you what I think we might want to add. And this is a resolution regarding House Bill 1011. I'm going to paraphrase a little bit. The Florida Representative Dave Barrero filed HB 11, which provides that certain government agencies and units of local government may only display specified flags and if approved, would limit the exhibition or display of flags in any manner by a governmental agency, local government, or unit of local government, the state flag, US flag, POW flag, and the official firefighter memorial flag. And whereas if approved, would not even allow the city of Lake Worth to fly its own municipal flag. HB 1011 further intrudes into the home rule as provided in section 2 sub B, article 8, I'm not good with of the Constitution of the state of Florida. And whereas the city has embraced its reputation as a destination and welcoming place for the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer community, and whereas the city is home to the Compass Community Center, whose mission is to engage, empower, and enrich the lives of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer people, and those impacted by HIV and AIDS. And whereas the city is proud to fly the pride flag annually at City Hall for Palm Beach Pride Month, and whereas the LGBT community has a lasting and positive impact on the city, and whereas the government decision makers of the city commission may select views it wishes to express, including the selection of monuments that portray what it views as appropriate for the place in question based on aesthetics, history, and local culture, we be it resolved that the city of Lake Worth opposes the adoption of HB 1011 and any other related bills. And in the event that the Florida legislature adopts HB 1011 or any other related bills, the city commission urges the Florida legislature to amend HB 1011 to allow the city to fly the city flag and honor and remember flag that meets the requirements of section 256.16. The city commission further directs the city administration to transmit a copy of this resolution to the Florida governor, Florida Senate president, the speaker of the Florida House, the Palm Beach County Legislative Delegation, the Florida League of Cities, the Broward County League of Cities, the Palm Beach County League of Cities, the Miami-Dade County League of Cities, and any other interested parties. All resolutions in conflict with this are repealed to the extent of such conflict. If any section is held to be invalid or unconstitutional, it does not affect the validity of the rest of it. I would like to amend that language a little bit, and I don't have exactly, but just to expand it, not to just include, not to just include the LGBTQ, to allow home rule to exist, that cities can fly flags on their own property that they feel appropriate to that community.
So is that section 3 of the resolution?
Yeah, I can certainly work with our attorney and that would go more, I think, in the where. Yeah, we just add a little, a whereas and
Yeah.
finally.
On the 5th whereas that we currently have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It talks about home rule. Do you want to just beef that up a little?
Yeah.
Or do we need another whereas?
Well, I would add a whereas whereas this, it's sort of attached to that, whereas the city has other interests that have been historically, we've flown Haitian flag, we've flown
We
other.
also have a very diverse population.
Yeah, exactly. So if you guys give me the permission to work with the manager and the clerk to just change it a little bit.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you.
Not so.
I love having the trust of my commission. It rarely happens.
I think you might ask the city clerk, but I think she was aware of an additional amendment to this that we should be aware of.
We don't know where, up in Tallahassee?
No, our city clerk. Yes, but she's the, if I understood.
Right, because she's talking to clerks up there, the clerk in Wilton Manor.
There's been a more recent amendment that adds even more alarm to.
You want to ask Melissa something?
Yeah.
We just.
Have you heard, Madam Clerk?
Madam Clerk.
I have actually been listening.
Oh, my God.
Do you have anything to
We're
add?
very delighted to hear that. What else have you heard?
Yes, so an additional allowable flag has been added as an amendment, and that flag is the Confederate flag.
No, well.
I think we ought to.
Thank you for bringing that
Was
up.
that amendment approved? Like they voted on that amendment?
We don't know.
It has been approved.
No, it has been amended. I was on the phone with City Attorney Elizabeth Lenahan earlier today. We went online to try to track what was going on with the bill. It did have a first reading on March 15th, but other than that, there is absolutely no information. It didn't record any votes or anything. There's a companion bill related to flags that was postponed. but it didn't say anything whatsoever other than there's been a first reading. And the city clerk in Wilton Manors told me that there had been an amendment to add the Confederate flag as an allowable flag to be flown.
If the mayor chooses to call out that portion,
I'm I'll talk to the attorney and the clerk about that. I don't know how specific, I'm sure.
if you felt so inclined.
It sounds like your overall focus is First Amendment freedom to fly the flag you
Right.
want.
Right,
So you may not want to say not this
I
one because
wouldn't-
that's what they're doing is saying
Yeah.
not this one.
yeah,
So as much as we'd like to say not this one,
right,
I hear you in that logic.
yeah, I mean, let's not.
My
Or
logic,
how about any countries that are actually in existence? How would that be?
Something, we'll talk tomorrow afternoon, Melissa.
All right, do we need a motion?
Yeah.
Motion
motion to- no, go ahead.
to approve and accept the changes that the mayor works on with the city attorney.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Because I'm guessing you want.
Would you like to say something? You're
Yeah.
Sitting like a patient,
You waited
patient
so long.
woman all night. Sorry, Jamie.
Do you have more items,
No.
Amy?
So I think that was very, first of all, thank you. My name is Julie Sieber. I live at 930 North Federal Highway. I want to thank you for publicly opposing this hateful bill. I think that in times of celebration and in times of mourning, raising and sometimes lowering the flag signifies unity and empathy and compassion. And those are the very reasons why I love this city so much. And I do appreciate that the city recognizes all of its populations and cultures and residents. And so this was never about targeting or wanting to be here to only have the LGBTQ flag raised and the pride flag raised, but for the city in its own autonomy to be able to celebrate the culture of its own residents and people. So I really appreciate this. I always want to live and work and play in a city that sees me and accepts me and my family. And we can all agree that things have been pretty tough in the legislation. So I appreciate the commissioner's willingness to go to Tallahassee. And we are looking forward very much to the entire city commission welcoming the crowds this weekend on Sunday on stage. History shows us that if they come for me today, they will definitely come for you tomorrow. And more specifically, not hurting me doesn't hurt you in any way, shape, or form. And so I just hope that the powers that be in Tallahassee take a lesson and a page from our big city. So thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate this.
And thank you, Julie and Compass, for everything that you do in our city. And this is a big weekend coming up. You better get your rest. Or so we're gonna 1 o'clock on Sunday. We're supposed to be on the dais. Okay,
Wait, on the stage?
on stage,
And the parade is at
11.
11.
It steps off at 11,
Oh, so-
not drag time,
Yes.
exactly 11. I promise, Captain Bear.
Well, I was at the show Saturday night bringing the queens and then one of them, she's saying, they started at like 8:05. It was amazing. It wasn't drag time. We actually started on time. It was great. It was a great show.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I took the opportunity there. I asked if I could just have a couple minutes and I did go up on stage before it started just to show this, just to say to the people that were there, which was surprisingly not the crowd that I thought would be in the audience. It was a bunch of old people. I love it. Like me. And I just took the opportunity to thank them and, thank the Playhouse for all that they do and just to, show that we are solidly behind our community. All right, very good. Thank you very much, Julie. Thank you for being so patient. All right, now we're going to moving right along. Okay, continuing contracts for professional services for civil engineering water category.
Good evening. Valentina Sesteda, Assistant Finance Director for Purchasing. I will give you an overview for all 5 items and then
Perfect.
go on. So the city has a requirement for professional services agreements for different engineering services to include civil engineering, geotechnical engineering, surveying, architecture, hydrogeological services, energy management.
If you could slow down and speak more speak more, I think people out there may not be able to hear you. Thank you, Valentina.
So we have a requirement for different engineering services to include civil engineering, geotechnical engineering, surveying, architecture, hydrogeological services, energy management, and engineering services. The city issued the request for qualifications for 7 different categories. Through the CCNA Act, the Florida Consultants Competitive Negotiations Act. And we have intended to award the contracts to multiple companies to provide those services for a period of 3 years plus 3 additional 1-year renewals. City received 60 proposals. We had the help from all of our staff to evaluate those. We assembled the evaluation committee. The evaluation committee shortlisted companies first. Then the companies were invited to provide the presentations, and then after that, the final evaluations were completed, and the rates are negotiated for each category. So for the first category, we have a civil engineering water category. We received 16 qualification submittals. We shortlisted 6 firms. They came in to the city, they did a public meeting and they did the presentations, and the final evaluation recommended the award to 4 firms, Mocruz and Associates, Kimley Horn and Associates, Holtz Consulting Engineers, and Chen Moore and Associates. So it's our request today to approve those 4 firms for the water.
Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, I think we can.
We will move for the civil engineering transportation category. We received here 10 qualification submittals. We shortlisted 5 firms, and the final evaluation recommended award to 4 firms: WGI, Mocruz Associates, Kimley Horn and Associates, and Stantec.
Do I have a motion?
To approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you.
The next one was for the hydrogeological category. We received 2 qualification submittal for those. We shortlisted 2, and we recommended awards to both firms, GLA Geosciences and Stantec.
Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
And then we have the architecture category. We have 7 qualification submittals. 6 firms were shortlisted, and the final evaluation recommendation was for 4 firms: CPZ Architects, Asahi Architect, Song and Associates, and WGI.
Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Do I? To approve?
So move to.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Next,
And the final category was the surveying category. We received 9 qualifications for this one. 5 firms were shortlisted, and we are recommending award to 4 firms: WGI, Dennis J. Levy and Associates, Ingenuity Group, and Averon and Associates.
do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. I know a lot of work, it seems so quick, but I know a lot of work goes into each one of these, and thank you. Okay, now, next up. E, this is, oh, thank you, E. Yeah, F. Yes, F. Mr., oh, Valentina? Mhm.
This is the tag team one, William Waters, Community Sustainability Director. As you know, we've been attempting over the past several years to get all of our city's property files digitized so they are available online. So a click to gov type activity. We started out with a firm out of New Jersey. They were bought out. They were not able to provide the services that we needed. Thanks to Valentina's team, we found a piggyback option from City of Coral Gables. Is that right? think it was. And we negotiated a contract with them and we're back on track. If you approve this contract to hopefully within 2 years have the city's 16,000 property files all digitized, they will be organized and our goal is through the city's website. If you go to a map, you can click on a property and all that information will pop up for you.
Every little thing that, I mean, I've been in a lot of property files and some.
Every little thing.
Okay.
And just one clarification question. Will we, once it's all digitized, will we ixnay the paper file?
Not all of it. We are keeping a lot of the historic building drawings, things that we think that have historic value, we're keeping. There are a lot of extraneous things that are in the file that we're going to get rid of, but our goal is to reduce our paper volume by at least 90%.
Just a thought, and this is totally selfish, that when you get to the stage of giving it away, you might give the option to the current property owner, hey, do you want paper files?
That's a good idea.
I'd love to have I can't.
Budget season's coming up and I can ask for additional staff person to do that. That'd be great.
Maybe we can get volunteers to do that. No, it's a good idea, because I would love mine as well.
Yeah, I brought
For
a
those-
scanner one time and scanned them in your office years ago. And
Maybe you could have a weekend where it's available, take it or leave it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Property files come up.
no, I don't want to make work, and I recognize that part, but some scheme, that, hey, if property owners are interested, send an email and come and get it.
My favorite piece in my property file was a pink slip of messing with messages telling me where I called before I bought my house to make sure that my ADU was in fact permitted. So, yeah, I knew the history of those and I checked before I bought. So motion to approve,
Motion to approve.
second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Agreement with Andco Consulting LLC for investment consulting services. Here we go.
Good evening, Yannick Gendahayo, interim finance director. Yannick Gendahayo, interim finance director. This is an agreement with Ancor. It's an investment consulting firm. They are currently providing managing the funds, the city's pension investment funds. And since we approved the investment policy back in November 2022, we wanted to also extend those services to Ancor and they were selected based on the experience that they have with the city's pension funds.
And they're the ones that have been working with us.
Yes.
Already.
And with that, they gave us a discount. They're charging us a flat fee of 30,000. Usually other investment firms, they usually charge us with the amount of money that we have available for them to invest. They usually charge approximately 40,000. Yes, this had been in discussion since 2021 with the market being volatile and stuff.
So when I go to the pension board meetings that I'm automatically a member of, that's a
Yes.
mistake. These are the people that are talking to us.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
A second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
you.
Thank you very much. Sorry you had to wait around so long. And we're so glad to have you here. Okay, now we're going to H, which is a little bit different. We had this discussion, the city clerk brought it up last time about instead of now that we don't have a election every year. For the concept, I think the intent was to have a yearly reassessment of who's going to represent what. Who. So this would be that. Do we have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Attorney, do you have any, No. Mr. Attorney has nothing to say. All right, do I have a motion
To approve, to adjourn,
to adjourn?
a motion to adjourn.
All in favor? Aye. That was enthusiastic.
I was like, wait a minute,
We didn't get a second.
Second, but
Melissa, I seconded that.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good night.